Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast presented to you by Texas Beat. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, do I have permission to call my shot?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Nothing could go wrong with that.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Don't look at my record in picks in any sort of social format. Do not go up and tally my picks for games or do so and fade away. I'm helping you out either way. I'm gonna call my shot here, and I'm gonna say that this is one of the most stacked episodes that we have ever had in the history of the Saturday Down South podcast. Call my shot. Okay. If you've read the title, you've seen who exactly is coming up. Laura Rutledge, Bear Fallica, they're joining us. Obviously, week 3, 6 games to break down, half of which are in the SEC. So I know it's another long episode for one of those people that's like, I like my pods like an hour and 15 minutes. All right, that's fine. Just consider
the wrong pod for you, brother. I don't know the last time we were an hour 15. Yeah.
No, in a recap pod, we're an hour and 15, but in a preview pod, no. We're going a little bit longer, but I promise you it is worth your time. Great conversations with two of the most respected people in this industry coming up. So let's dig right into it, Will. Let's start with week 3. LSU and Mississippi State, a game that is always centered around your birthday, and you always have good vibes going into. LSU's a 9.5 point favorite in this one. The over-under I have, and this is going to make you depressed, so I'm warning you right now. That sounds so bad. The over-under is 6.5 yards per rush in the first half for Mississippi State.
Okay.
Why do I say that? Sounds very specific. Yes, it is. Will, great question. That is what LSU has allowed in the first half in its first 2 games. That's the average. 6.6 yards per rush allowed in the first half by LSU. That's dead last in Power 5. And remember, one of those teams was an FCS squad. So not great. Not great. On the flip side, Woody Marks, all bang the drum team member, Mississippi State running back. He is PFF's highest graded running back in America through 2 weeks. Mississippi State running backs, a thing. How about it?
How about Mississippi State going from when they had Mullen initially and they had Booby Dixon, and they were just like running the ball a billion times a game, like out of like under center, out of the eye. And then they moved to Nick Fitzgerald, who is a mobile quarterback. And so then they're doing QB run, like some of that like Florida style option. Then they went air raid, which is a completely different offensive system. And now they have gone pistol, ground and pound. So you've seen the whole cornucopia of outcomes as a Mississippi State fan.
We respect Kylan Hill on this podcast. Needs to be remembered as part of that like Mullen Moorhead hybrid who had very, very productive year and a half or so at Mississippi State. But yeah, it is kind of weird. They have gone through pretty significant transformations. And the one they're undergoing this year, talked about it a lot in the offseason. It was always going to be significant because every transition away from the Mike Leach air raid is significant, but didn't realize it would be this drastic. It's an interesting chess match, and maybe more so than what that spread would suggest. Because if you're Mississippi State, are you going to say, no, I don't care that LSU in that front 7 has Harold Perkins, Mason Smith, Mekhi Winkle.
Allegedly LSU has Harold Perkins. No confirmed sightings of Harold Perkins yet.
We know he's out there. We know he's
out there.
But he's a little bit too much camouflage. That's what it looks like in the first part of this season. So
like Perkins just in a deer blind,
right?
I think where'd this guy go?
I think he likes hunting. I might have made that up, but I feel like I've seen a Harold Perkins hunting photo. Maybe that was just hunting quarterbacks. Who knows? But you're looking at those guys in the front 7, and you're thinking to yourself, you know what? I think we could run at them. That's kind of a crazy thought, and not one that's very conventional. Or do you say, if you are Mississippi State, we were too conservative last week. We would like to see the SEC's all-time leader in completions, Will Rogers. We'd like to see him test this LSU secondary that is loaded with question marks. So if you're Kevin Barbay, your boy, Mississippi State offensive coordinator, how do you respond? If you're Zach Arnett, are you pushing your OC to be like, no. I've watched this defense on film. This is where we need to attack them. LSU looks like a defense with some holes right now, albeit a defense that still has a lot of talent. And I want to see how desperate LSU looks in this one, because usually we're not talking about LSU having to be desperate at this point of the season. But I think LSU's got to approach every single week like its season is on the line, because if they don't, their floor is just so much lower than I think even they realize. And we all should realize it. at this point. For all the good that Brian Kelly has done so far, think about this, Will. Their record against Power 5 competition under Brian Kelly is what?
Power 5 competition. I mean, they had a winning record in the SEC last year, so I feel like it's pretty good. I don't know.
7-5, pretty good.
Well, if you're A&M.
I mean, they're not A&M though. That's the thing. They're a team that in the last calendar year has actually played in a conference championship game, whereas A&M has not done that in the 21st century. Different set of expectations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your losses, though, you got two great Florida State teams. Tennessee, great team. Georgia, great team. Another team that they lost to.
Yeah, sure. Are we calling the Florida State team that showed up in week 1 last year a great team? Because I wouldn't say that they were a great team.
They're a 10-win team.
They ended up being a 10-win team. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Quality losses, brother. Come on. This is the SEC. Quality losses.
You look at those 12 games, though, that they've played against Power 5 competition under Brian Kelly. LSU's only plus 30. That's it. That speaks to probably some of the blowout losses that they've had. So if you break that down, that means on average against Power 5 competition, LSU is plus 0.2.5 points per Power 5 game. That's it. Like the floor, it's just not high enough to sleepwalk through SEC West games, though I'll admit they got away with it at times last year. I thought they got away with it against Mississippi State, against a team that had a lead on them going into the fourth quarter, and then they scored 21 consecutive points to end that game and make that game look a little bit more lopsided than it was. I'm not assuming that LSU is going to sleepwalk. I don't think they will sleepwalk through this one. I'm going to take LSU to win a thriller, but not cover 9.5 points. I think this is like a 28-21 type game. And LSU, I think, has to grow up a little bit. Slow start. Cowbells are rocking. It's 1,000,000,000 degrees for an 11 a.m. kickoff. But two things are the difference. I don't think Mississippi State is going to be able to cover former Mississippi State commit Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, all bang the drum team member who's off to a great start this year. I think
most targets in college football without a drop.
Is that right?
Yep.
Because the drop, he didn't get credited for the drop on the play where he fell, and that play was picked off. So that's technically
that was simply just falling.
Yeah. Did we ever get a ruling on that? That I couldn't see from where we were. The Brian Thomas, the play that it looked like it was just right in his hands, and he dropped it on the sideline against Florida State, but it was maybe tipped or something. I don't think we ever got clarification on that one. But
I don't know. I burned that whole game tape.
I don't blame you. Bury it in the backyard. That's the way to do it. But I don't think Mississippi State is going to be able to stop those guys. And I think Jaden is able to kind of settle in. The lack of faith that Mississippi State has in the passing game, which is still a weird thing to be able to say out loud, I think that proves costly. Will Rogers throws a pick late, a rare pick. Do you see LSU winning this game?
Yeah, I think we're totally aligned on here. Other than like kind of how we get there, I think that 9.5 is a mad disrespectful spread given how this LSU team has looked against the one Division I team they played. I think LSU will win but not cover. Yeah, like a 2-possession win at Mississippi State just feels like it's not. This is really, like I said, disrespectful for an SEC game. And I guess like the public kind of money has shifted off of this new Mississippi State offense. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's what we love about the pistol is, okay, look at what Colorado did and has done for the last 2 weeks. The way that they come out in these pistol sets, and let me do my Coach O impression, multiple. They're multiple all the time, right? That's what Coach O was trying to be when he hired Pelini famously, but they succeed at Colorado. They run these pistol sets with these motions, with these wide sets, and they'll hand it off to the running back. And it's
2-back sets. Yep, a lot of that.
Yep. And I think that is what you hope for when you run this offense is, maybe a little bit of quarterback mobility, which they haven't even unlocked that part of their offense as far as Colorado. But I do go back to, if this is a team that can run the ball, usually football coaches are just going to do that. It's very simple. It's like handball off to your running back. No chance at turnover, 5-6 yards, going to do that. And so point being, I think that's going to slow the game down. I do see this as being a lower scoring game. It certainly was last year. But I think that like overall, like their pace of play is going to keep them in the game throughout. But yeah, to your point, I just think that like, it's so stupid that we do this thing with Jaden Daniels every time he has a bad game where we pretend like he's not good. I hate it so much. And I understand he looks like he struggles a little bit when in those games, like he looks like he can't get to the second read. But if you look at how he won this game last year, I do think that, we're going to see the Jaden Daniels coming out party finally, where he starts hitting these receivers. Hopefully Kieran Lacey gets off the field. Hopefully we get Chris Hilton on the field. Yeah. Whatever. I'll learn that dude's names when he stops dropping stuff. That's my rule. When he deserves to be on the field, that's when we go learn his name. Get Hilton out there because he's been electric in practice and like all the reps they've given him. But yeah, I think that LSU to win this game needs to be multiple and push that pace, and I think they can do that. Not for 9.5 points.
Yeah. When you say disrespectful, I think that's been the entire angle toward Mississippi State this entire offseason, being picked to finish last in the West. How many teams go from winning 9 games, finishing in the top 25, returning a very, very productive starting quarterback in Will Rogers? Obviously, there were questions about the scheme change and what that was going to look like. And it's like, oh no, you're going to finish last in the division. It's like, what? Like that just isn't typically how it goes. And obviously the coaching change had a big piece of that, but this is a huge, huge opportunity for Zach Arnett. This is massive. And I wonder if coming off of last week, a game that I think there are some Mississippi State fans that are like, thank God we won that and we found a way. But if it allows them to fix some things in a win, we talk about that. You'd rather have to fix things in a win as opposed to having to do that in a loss. And it allows them to tweak their offense. But I just don't know that LSU for 4 quarters is on the mat that long. I think sooner or later that alarm bell is going to go off. The sense of urgency is going to be there. And even if Jaden gets off to the start where it's like, oh boy, here he goes. He's running again on every single time where his first read isn't there. I think at some point he figures that out and they're able to pick the defense apart. And maybe it's a little bit similar to last year, maybe not as drastic of a comeback for LSU.
Yeah, and the big thing to look at, and I think you're like almost hit on that, but it's like the Jaden Daniels run was, I mean, it was the leading rusher last year by a mile. At some point, we got to see, the Logan Diggs, the John Emery guys that didn't play week 1. We got to see this offensive line actually start blocking dudes on run plays, because that is not a functional offense where your quarterback has 800 rushing yards and they're all unplanned. So that's what I would look for in this game too, is as much as we love to see a matchup of quarterbacks, because these are have been 2 great quarterbacks, maybe not right now. But yeah, I think it's going to really come down to run game versus run game, because LSU and Brian Kelly have always wanted to establish that. And it just keeps getting kicked to the back burner at LSU, because it's like, we got nobody at DB. We got Carol Perkins playing this weird position. It's like, you guys should just run the ball. I think that would help you a lot.
Logan Diggs looked like the guy, albeit against lesser competition, returning last week. And you're like, okay, there's a reason why Brian Kelly went out and brought him, back to his home state, a guy who was at Notre Dame that obviously he knew really well. And if he becomes kind of the feature back in this offense and they try and put pressure on that Mississippi State defense that way, I think it's better. Like the Jaden running part, him having more rushing attempts than any FBS quarterback last year, it's why this offense looks so herky-jerky at points. It's tough to get into a rhythm when those are your plays. Like your offensive linemen aren't feeling good about the blocking, because usually it's a play that's breaking down. Your receivers are out there wondering if they're going to get a pass, then, maybe they're coming back to the ball. They're not really contributing. Nobody's really contributing in a lot of these situations other than Jaden Daniels. And it doesn't really get the offense into much of a flow. So yeah, it's great that it can move the chains at certain points. And obviously there's tremendous value in it. I'm not denying that, but agreed. More of the actual backfield and not just Jaden as the guy who has twice as many carries as everybody else for LSU.
Yeah. And I think too, the people who are calling for Nuss to start, it's like, you're basically saying Brian Kelly is not a functional adult, and you need to remove the fun toy from his.
There's a lot of people saying Brian Kelly's not a functional adult. There's a lot of people.
Oh, okay, that's also fair, but it's like you have to take away the fun shiny thing for him to run a proper offense, and I just don't think that's the case. I think that with Nuss, he's not going to have that QB run element, and yeah, you're going to need to feed the backs, but do we really want or need that when Jaden's made so many big plays? So yeah, hopefully, I think Jaden gets on track for this one.
Let's go to Kansas State and Mizzou. A game in which Kansas State is only a 4.5 point favorite. The over-under I have is 7.5 Luther Burden catches. That is
we've already started. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's his
RG3
average.
Somewhere.
That is no. It's a different story this year, which is good. That's the good news. He is averaging 7.5 catches through 2 games. It is a totally different story than this time last year against Kansas State, when he only had 1 catch for 9 yards. They get smoked in that game. Luther Burden is awesome. He is absolutely awesome. He is worth all of the buzz. He is also the reason that I got hit with my first ever DMCA on Twitter, and I had my account temporarily suspended for a few hours. That was fun. Mizzou has 34 completed passes this year, and 15 have gone to Luther Burden. That is a huge target share. It's incredible.
Correct. That's the way to do it.
That's good. That's great.
Yeah, let's do that.
In theory, it is great that we are not having the same exact discussion as last year, because if that were the case, buddy, the amount of people that would be searching Eli Drinkwitz's buyout on Twitter, it would be even higher than it currently is. But that's temporarily on the back burner, maybe at least for a minute. But in actuality, the entire offense looks like it's just Luther Burden and then maybe the occasional dash of Nathaniel Pete or Cody Schrader, something like that. Mizzou was lucky that Middle Tennessee just forgot how to cover a wheel route. And that play that Nathaniel Pete just was 49-yard wheel route in that game where nobody was within like 15 yards of that guy. Yeah, you're not going to be able to get that on a weekly basis. There is not a lot, if any, optimism of the Mizzou offense outside of Luther Burden and then Sam Horn, but that's a bit more of an unknown. So obviously, against the defending Big 12 champs who throttled Mizzou last year, I think that Luther Burden is going to be heavily involved. Bold prediction that he is going to have a very significant workload in this one. But Will, this number is weird. It is the weirdest number of the week of any that I looked at. Kansas State only being a 4.5-point favorite at Mizzou, which, look, I'm not saying that Columbia is a bad atmosphere, not dogging it or anything like that. Not doing that. But Kansas State just blasted a Troy team that some had in their preseason top 25. A team that was really good last year, finished in the top 25. They were picked to win the Sun Belt. Will Howard looks the part. One of my favorite Heisman dark horses coming into this year. That offensive line is still really good. Chris Kleiman's a phenomenal coach. He has been really, really good in non-conference play as well. His only non-conference play loss at Kansas State was a loss last year to Tulane, which was a game that we thought at the time looks really bad. They end up being really, really good. So I don't know. I'm just trying to figure this one out. Kansas State is the number one run defense in America through 2 games. The competition, not great, but even if they're just solid against the run and it turns into Brady Cook throwing the football 30 times in a game, you don't want Brady Cook doing that. Nobody does. So I've got Kansas State by 2 touchdowns, even though I'm probably an idiot for not sensing something really weird with that 4.5-point spread. I can't figure it out. And if I could put any sort of logic behind it other than Luther Burden is great, and I still like Blake Baker a lot, and it's a much improved defensive coordinator, but at the same time, it's a defense that struggled last year against Kansas State, albeit this is a Kansas State offense that doesn't have Deuce Vaughn anymore. But man, this is potentially for Mizzou. If they win this game, Mizzou will own the best SEC win of the 2023 season. Think about that.
Tulane. We're just forgetting about Tulane already?
This one, I think this one's a little. If Michael Pratt was out there, that'd be a different story. I think this one would be better. I mean, Kansas State's sitting there number 15 in the country right now. They're at full go. You know what this means, though, and we talk about this a lot with Drink. We do more than any other coach on this podcast. Toby Keith game. How do you like me now? It's on the table. It's on the table. Heard that song the other day. Still slaps every single time. If you do not turn up that song in your car, check your pulse. I'm just saying. But I can't figure this out. I'm just going to do the dumb thing and say Kansas State wins by 2 touchdowns.
Well, I'm going to do the equally dumb thing in another direction, Connor. I am going to go ahead and pick Mizzou to win this game. And I'll tell you why. Mizzou needs to win this game. What hopium are you selling with this new contract and with all the things that Mizzou is doing if you can't beat Kansas State at home? What was the point of leaving the Big 12? Honestly, we need to, they have had those wins, and we've talked about it a lot. It was against, Mullen and Florida, and they've had, these close calls with Georgia. They need to just actually do something. I've said it over and over and over again about Mizzou, where it's just what is the point of this team right now? What do they succeed at? You talked about Luther Burden's obviously talented, but another year of Brady Cook is just, I don't get it. This is I feel a How Do You Like Me Now game brewing, where we look up and Drink gets get on the podium and he's all cocky and he's just how about that Brady Cook? I would let him date my daughter. And that was such a weird quote from Jake if you haven't seen that one. But yeah, like, and so point being, like, I feel like they need to win this game for me to be interested in them going forward. Like, I feel like another like 6-6, 7-5 SEC bottom, like mid minus of the SEC East finish for Mizzou is like, what's the point of any of this? You're not here to be a doormat. You didn't go out and get, Drake, who at the time was a great hire. You didn't extend Drake. You didn't land Luther Burden. You didn't, get Sam Horn. You didn't do all of this to just lose to Kansas State at home and win 7 games again. I don't know. I want it. I'm willing it to happen.
If we're going to see what Bill Connolly had in his percentage of returning production stat, even in the updated stat, in the updated version of that came out in August, Mizzou was sitting there at number 2 in the country. If you're going to, if not now, then when? That's the biggest question. If not now, then when? Because in non-conference play, it's been bad. You look at what Mizzou has done with Drink. It's been really, really bad. And it wasn't a topic of conversation that first COVID season because we thought Mizzou going 5-5 in an all SEC schedule. We're talking about, man, Mizzou and Arkansas. What a brutal hand that Sam Pittman and Eli Drinkowitz were dealt this first season. It sucks. And then we're thinking, how about that? They beat LSU. Look at this. They're doing things. They're making noise.
They sure did.
They did.
Didn't they?
They did. And instead, though, we're left wondering, well, man, what are you building towards? Because if you have this type of return, these type of returning pieces, one would think it has to click, and you have to start beating teams that you shouldn't. And that's the opportunity that awaits. And not like beating a team that's in the midst of a disaster season, but like beating a team with a win that actually ages really well. That's the biggest thing that I think we need to see from Mizzou in this game. So I'm kind of glad that we're split. We hedged. That was smart. That was really smart.
Yeah, it's so funny because I was trying to I had made up my mind on this before I looked at data, and all the data said no. And the best part of this, I love a good headline. This is one from Rock M that says, through 2 tune-up games, is Mizzou tuned up?
It's a fair question, man. It's a fair question. Middle Tennessee was bad. It was really, really bad. And I'll be honest, I wasn't watching that game from start to finish, but every time I'm flipping over and watching that one, you could sense the angst in that crowd. And that's a bad place to be because when angst turns into boo birds and just sheer disappointment, that's not great. That is not great. It feels like a huge, huge moment awaits, even though we're not even in conference play yet for Mizzou.
Yeah, I mean, that Middle Tennessee State AD is also a sicko because he had them playing Miami last year, then Alabama and Mizzou to open up this year. Boy, dude just won some travel for his lads. Good for him. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the FPI gives a 69% chance for Kansas State it has a 69% chance for Kansas State to win this one. And again, nothing logical about it, but at some point, if you're not going to be, I hate to say it, but like you got to beat the joke allegations at some point. You got to be a serious head football coach and make me believe that all this talent is going somewhere.
Put the entire SEC on your back, Mizzou. Now is your opportunity that you've been waiting for years. Here you go. This is it. Okay, South Carolina and Georgia, huge spread. Georgia's a 27.5 point favorite. Whopping spread. The over-under I have is 2.5 reminders that this is the last year of SEC on CBS, Will. I hate that. This is the first SEC on CBS game of the year. One of the last times that SEC fans will get to curse Gary. Guys, these are prime moments. When we're counting down, you got to savor every second. I'm sad that it's going away. You should just automatically record every 3:30 on CBS game, whether it's involving your team or not. Just have that, because at some point when this season ends, you're going to want to go back and you're going to want to watch these games in full, and you're going to want to get the drums going, and you're going to want it to feel like it's meaningful football. And when you're sitting there in March and you're thinking to yourself, I cannot take another stupid spring headline, you're going to say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to fire up the DVR. I'm going to get some SEC on CBS going. This life is good. Everything's going to be okay. I'm just going to go into a different time in my life. And this is the first time that we can do that. Even the ones that have a lopsided spread like this one are worth your viewing. Here's what I found.
I'll tell you what, nothing brings me back to my childhood more than those drums and just watching the Alabama Crimson Tide run out of that tunnel knowing they're about to roll LSU. Like, I feel like that game was always a 3:30 game, and it was like, here we go. No, here we go. This is it. Like you get like 3 or 4 plays in, you're like, here we go again. But yeah, no, I like that. Like that noise was just like, this is your team's like game of the year. You have to win this. And yeah, I feel like kind of going back and forth was fun. But yeah, I'll be at this one, so I'm counting on you to send me the text. He keeps calling Carson Beck, Carson Wentz, LOL. Just keep me updated on what I'm missing because I'll be out of this one.
Goodness gracious, we can't get that from Gary. I don't think that's going to happen in this one. I'm just, you know what? Let's take the good with the bad. Let's just do that. We can all agree to do that. Here's what I keep wondering about with this game. I don't care what Kirby Smart and Shane Beamer say publicly. I know that these two coaches do not like each other. I know that. I don't think they send each other Christmas cards. I don't think they look forward to that midfield handshake. I don't think they look forward to being asked about one another, despite the fact that Shane Beamer was on Kirby Smart's staff. Is there a world in which these slow starts that Georgia has gotten off to was perhaps the byproduct of trying to be a little bit conservative and knowing South Carolina sits there in week 3, and when that game rolls around, they are going to get the full arsenal. And I'm not just talking about doing things creatively from an offensive standpoint, but I'm talking about firing up the pressure packages, dialing up unique blitzes, exotic. That'll be a word that Gary throws out there, and they crank it up. I wonder.
It's just a one-man pressure. It's like they're sending one linebacker. Gary's like, I've never seen this before.
This is crazy. They're sending him right through the A gap. What is this? Oh, dang. You might be able to do that against South Carolina, given the way things have gone so far. I think early on, at least, this is going to be all about Georgia's defense flexing its muscles. I think that's the biggest thing. It's going to be sacks. It's going to be TFLs, turnovers, all of it. That is what sets the tone in this game. And I think it feels, from the Georgia standpoint, a little bit 2021-ish. That the defense looks that good. And just getting a first down for South Carolina maybe feels like a challenge. Maybe it's not the Georgia offense that's setting the world on fire, but that's also because they could have short fields, capitalizing in key spots just to be able to get a significant lead. And they're not asked to do a whole lot. When you're starting from your opponent's 47 in plus territory or whatever, you don't really have to have big chunk plays or anything like that. You can be somewhat basic and still get out to a nice early lead. And I'm looking at that number thinking 27.5 is big. It's real big. And I also realized that I had South Carolina finishing second in the East. So what does it mean if the gap is that big between Georgia and South Carolina? But I think this
means it's 2023. I mean, that's about what we thought.
That means it's like what it was the last couple of years. I think it's a bad matchup. It's a really bad matchup for South Carolina. I think Kirby and that defensive staff is salivating, just salivating at the possibility of overwhelming that South Carolina offensive line. That's what I think will be pivotal, because you could look at this and say, you know what, Javon Bullard, he's banged up. Maybe Spencer Rattler, Xavier Legette, perhaps Juice Wells is possibly back. Maybe those connections that Spencer Rattler has been able to develop and looking pretty good, I think, all things considered in the first 2 games. Maybe that gives Georgia a little bit of difficulty, and South Carolina kind of has them on their heels. I don't think Spencer Rattler's getting enough time to stretch the field. I think that offensive line is going to be a letdown. Maybe if I knew South Carolina's 2 best players, Juice Wells, Nick Eamon-Worry, if those 2 guys were going to be full go playing all the snaps, this could be a bit different. I can't bank on that. I think this turns into a lopsided game. I think Georgia wins 42-7.
So let me ask this question, because I do feel like this is going to be kind of a coming out party for Georgia's new defense, because all the guys that we've seen over the years are more or less gone, right? I mean, talk about like Nakobe Dean, Jalen Carter, like Walker, those guys are all more or less gone. So while you may be accurate that this defense is good, we don't quite know their names yet. So who would you say are the guys who are going to kind of
Michael Williams? That's the guy who I think in this game we're going to look up and go, oh boy. Yep, there was a reason why, even with pretty pedestrian numbers. Georgia's guys have pedestrian numbers. Georgia doesn't have an edge rusher right now that meets the snap minimum on PFF. That's how much they have been rotating these guys in and out.
God, that's a nightmare.
It's crazy. So like if your argument to why a Georgia player isn't as good as what we say they are, tell me how many snaps they're playing and tell me that when you see them out on the field, they're not disruptive, because that definitely plays a pretty significant role in this.
If you think that, just wait for the draft, number one. And number two, I mean, there's nothing scarier than, hey, here's a 5-star that you don't even know his name because we have so many of them. We're going to give you the hardest, best 5 snaps of his life right now.
Yeah,
you are about to be locked in a phone booth with this random 5-star who is 18 and wants to break the rotation. And then he's going to come off and the starter's going to come back on and he's going to feel compelled to be even angrier.
Tyke Smith, the former West Virginia transfer, this is going to be one of those games where they start sending him on blitz packages, and you're just going to be thinking to yourself, oh my God, they've just got it coming from all directions. It looks like they're trying to do what South Carolina did in the opener and just play with 13 guys on the field at once and realize that's cheating. But with Georgia, it's not cheating. It's just how good they are. All right.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And even looking at the way that Georgia labels their defense is so horrifying. I mean, they got Jack, Money, Mac, Star. They have all these like Kirby Smart terms that are just like, this guy's job is to kill the quarterback. We're going to give him a pretty name, but functionally you'll know his name by the end of the year because he'll be in all the highlight packages. So yeah, I'm right there. I think Georgia's definitely gotten into the benefit of the doubt category where I'm just excited to see who breaks out in this game, because at the end of the day, say what you will about Gene Chizik and the great defense over there at North Carolina. And we love them. We think they're doing a great job. They've turned it around. They're doing great. Yep. However, if you're Kirby Smart in this defense and Glenn Schumann, you are licking your chops at that offensive line, because as great of a coach as Mac Brown is, as great of DC as Gene Chizik is, not taking anything away from them, the identity for Georgia football has been to just strike fear in your heart. And when you see an offensive line that just looks like they don't want to be there against North Carolina, you're like, brother, let me introduce you to hell right now. It's in the state of Georgia.
Jamon Dumas-Johnson, another guy that's probably going to get going and probably going to get his in this one. Have you been to a Georgia game before? Have you been to
not inside the stadium?
Huh. Mm-mm. Okay, so first time for Will. This will be fun. This will be a good experience for you, because like I trust me, and I'm still trying to work my way to every single SEC stadium. If you haven't been to an SEC stadium and an opportunity presents itself, take it 100%. Every single time. And there are people who would be like, oh, you know what? Like, why would I want to go to a game at Vandy? Why would I want to go to a game at Kentucky?
It's in Nashville, dog. What do you mean? That's like one of the best places to travel to a game.
I could sell anybody on an SEC football game at any given time. I promise you that. So glad you're going to be there. Boots on the ground. You'll be with our guy Perry. That'll be a good time. Looking forward to hearing your takes on that afterwards on the recap pod. Okay, BYU, Arkansas. Arkansas is an 8.5 point favorite. The over-under I have, big on yards per carry today. I don't know why I am, but the over-under I have is 3.4 yards per carry for the Arkansas ground game. Woof. That is bad. That's what it's been so far. It's been, I don't want to say it's been straight basura, but it's been borderline basura.
Adjacent. Recycling.
Yeah, sure. That's good. I don't know recycling in Spanish. You're gonna have to look that one up.
Me either, brother.
Yeah, we'll figure that one out. Those ground game struggles for Arkansas, they have been an issue. It's been magnified, obviously, with Rocket still banged up. He's not going to be able to give it a go in this one. We knew it was going to be a different Arkansas running attack with the Dan Enos offense. The volume was going to be dialed back. KJ wasn't going to be used as much as a runner. They weren't going to get as many plays in just in general, pivoting away from the Kendall Briles offense. Also, probably the new rules not really helping them out as much. I'll be honest, I should have listened a bit more to Sam Pittman when he talked about the concern that he had on the offensive line, because outside of Limmer and Latham, who are two anchors, obviously, who've been there since the beginning of time, that experience on that offensive line is lacking, and it has shown in the first part of the season. I think that they're going to get off to probably another slow start running the football. I don't know that we can totally bank on that group really getting after it and setting the tone the way that we're used to seeing throughout the Sam Pittman era. But here's the good news. KJ looks great. KJ, man, KJ's QB1 for a reason. He looks comfortable in this new scheme as a thrower, and they got off to a little bit of a slow start, I realize, against Kent State, but take the PFF grades for what they are. Sometimes they tell the story. Sometimes I think they're a little bit misleading. JJ McCarthy is the only quarterback in the country with a better PFF grade than KJ through week 2. That's pretty good. And it's not just the rushing stuff. It's passing. It's what he has done with his arm. You can still use him in the ground game. He is such a unique weapon Go ask BYU about that. I mean, that play that he made last year, whenever KJ goes to the NFL, it'll be on his highlight reel where he just escapes 3 different BYU defenders. And you're just like, oh my God, this is why I make the comparisons to early Ben Roethlisberger. He has that type of gear to just shake people off somehow. The hit that he shook off in week 1 was just all-time stuff. Like, guy came through full speed, and KJ is just like, ooh, fly, get off me. Let me flick you off right there. No big deal. He's a piece of iron. He is. Mm-hmm. But I think that's not what they want with KJ, obviously. Mm-hmm. They want clean pockets. They want other guys to get going in the backfield. That would be an ideal scenario where their offensive line takes over. I don't think this game has the same sort of feel as last year when Arkansas went into Provo and lit them up for like 600 yards. I mean, it was a track.
That game was fun.
That game, the views, we got tweets of the views beforehand in Provo. That was beautiful. Love me some Provo. That site is.
You need to have like an honorary Barry Odom, like a celebrity shot in Pong that you can just call and be like, you know what? Looks like a really great day for football. We should give up 500 yards today. Barry, get over here.
Yeah, sure. Why not? No big deal. Yeah, Barry's
scoring. Yeah.
Yeah, Barry's going to have to try and slow down the Vandy offense this week. Big day. If you're a daily fantasy player, I don't really give out daily fantasy things for college football very much. Will Shepherd. Just thank me later. Will Shepherd, okay? Mm-hmm. Anyway, what are we talking about? Oh, yeah, Arkansas. I think Arkansas against a BYU team that basically started off against 2 FCS teams. Sam Houston is in its first season as an FBS squad, so take that for what it is. I think the Hogs get some mojo going. I think that atmosphere at night, after obviously 2 pretty quiet games to start the season, I think those fans show up ready to go. Relatively untested Arkansas defense makes enough plays to be able to win like a 28-14 type game. So they cover, but I'm going to leave the door open for madness because these 2 teams haven't played anyone yet. And it feels like we're going to find out a whole lot about Arkansas and BYU.
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping for success out of our thick king KJ, who is fully in like put the team on my back mode here without Rocket. And I think so. As you say this, I'm realizing this is like one of the worst like years for SEC offensive lines that I think we've ever seen. Like if you go down the list of like South Carolina struggled, Alabama struggled,
Ole Miss is struggling right now too.
Ole Miss struggled against Tulane. You literally can go, and it's like Arkansas, who you'd probably pick to have one of, if not the best line in the SEC, is not running the ball well, which they have 2 of the most dynamic ball carriers. So it's super interesting. Do you think that's like so many coordinator changes are leading to that?
Yeah, that could be. That could definitely be 10 new offensive coordinators in the SEC. I'd say Tennessee has passed the test of an offensive line that's looked good even without Cooper Mays to start the year. But you're right. So many offensive lines have felt really, really disappointing so far. Where you thought it was going to be a strength in the Bama thing, we'll kind of wait and see. I think Georgia's their standard for offensive line play is so unbelievably high. I think Georgia fans have been a little bit underwhelmed with the offensive line so far. But you're right. It's kind of up and down the conference right now where there haven't been a whole lot of these groups that you're saying, oh, maybe have them in consideration for the Joe Moore Award. I'd love to get Cole's take on that. I'll get Cole probably on the show, hopefully in the next couple of weeks or so. But that's something to put a pin in. And I think Arkansas is definitely one of those teams.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I do feel like they're going to find their mojo against BYU. I think these kinds of games are so great when you have a quarterback like KJ, who's just like, if you're not used to seeing a guy like that on film, it's just so hard to stop him. You got to throw multiple guys at him. We won't call him Cam Newton because that's sacrilege in this pod, but early Ben Roethlisberger, he is very hard to tackle. So yeah, I think that's I do think that like they can just kind of lean forward and hopefully start to, again, kind of like the point about like LSU. It's like, hey, maybe without Rocket, you guys start to run the plays a little bit better because you can't just give it to Rocket and make 3 dudes miss. We're gonna hope for that.
I don't know, man. It's been a rough go. I had such higher expectations for Dominique Johnson coming into last year too, and it's just been really tough sledding for him. AJ Green is super, super fast, and hopefully they can get him some spots in the open field. Rashad DeBinion as well, but yeah, the Arkansas ground game has just been one of those head scratchers. It does feel like a game where KJ is going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting, because even if the Arkansas ground game is decent, it's still going to take probably some big time throws to win this one. Okay, another offensive line that has admittedly struggled to start the year, Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a 19.5 point favorite against Georgia Tech. The over-under I have is 4.5 reminders of how I once fell in love with Haynes King. I did. It wasn't to, I don't want to say it was to Malik Willis levels. It wasn't, but I wanted to see him spin it in 2021. And I felt very robbed when he went down against Colorado that game week 2. Obviously, he didn't really look very good in the 5 quarters or so that he played up to that point that year. But that was kind of before the stench of Jimbo's offense had really set in.
See, you did a classic mistake here is that you trusted Jimbo's opinion on offense. It was the classic Jay Coker situation where you heard Jimbo be like, yo, this guy is so good. And you're like, yeah, no, I got it. He's good. And it was like, wait a minute. Maybe Jimbo's lying to me again.
A&M had just finished number 4 in the country, coming off their best finish in the AP poll since 1939.
Jimbo had the juice.
Yeah. I mean, they were they were not an exciting, explosive group, and that was well documented that year. So I loved the idea of Haynes King coming into that A&M offense and being a more explosive version of Kellen Mond, because that's kind of what he was billed as a recruit. And then I think getting hurt might have changed the course of his career. Whatever. He's the starter for Georgia Tech now. That was the point I was trying to make.
Is he?
He's the starter for Georgia Tech. That's why I'm bringing him up. He already has as many touchdown passes this year as he did last year at A&M, where he started off as QB1. Obviously, he lost his job. Eventually, he got it back because of injuries, whatnot. But you've got also, in addition to Haynes King, a couple familiar SEC faces in that receiver room. His former teammate, Chase Lane. You have former Georgia receiver Dominique Blaylock, who I think he tore his ACL at Georgia 15 times. I don't know if he still has an ACL left, but good for that guy for still playing football. Still remember him in the 2019 SEC championship thinking, this guy's pretty good. This guy's going to be a good player. More 5 years later, we're like, oh, maybe he's going to be a good player. I don't know. I think Tech pushes the Pete Golding defense. Why do I say that? Haynes King, this is me falling in love with Haynes King again. I'm doing it. Whatever.
Here we go. Block him, sis.
Haynes King nearly beat a Pete Golding defense in Tuscaloosa last year. Need we not forget Jalen Milroe started that game. I thought Haynes King was super tough in that game. Tough as nails. Did not have much of a chance against that pass rush. Bama got after him, and he was hobbled in that game 100%. I think Georgia Tech covers in this game. I do. I think this has a different feel than last year's game because I trust the identity of the Georgia Tech passing offense a little bit more than what it was with our friend Jeff Collins. But I still think it's going to be too much of the Ole Miss offense. A week after we talked about the struggles of Quinshon Judkins and Kiffin saying publicly, which he has not really done with his offensive line, saying, he's concerned about the ground game. They need to be able to get going. This is the time when you got to figure it out. And even if it's not 300-yard games, it's efficiency. It's 7 yards a carry. I think
Jackson Dart finally played well, and now he's like got Lane off his back. He's like,
right.
Look, Lane only dumps on me after the first game. Who's he going to yell at now? The whole offensive line.
Yes, it's the chain of screaming. It just diverted to the running room. It's exactly what it is. Lane's got to have somebody to be mad at. And it's been the ground game, and it just hasn't been good enough creating those holes. Longest run of the year for Quinshon Judkins, 13 yards, as we were talking about the other day. This changes that. I think he is one of those runs where 40 yards up the gut, touchdown, and we're saying to ourselves, oh yeah, there's a reason why this guy was preseason All-American, why he led the SEC in rushing last year. Quinshon Judkins, still a very good football player. I think Ole Miss wins this game 35-21. Not a great day for the Ole Miss defense, but a good enough day. And you get out of here with a victory and feeling better about the ground game going into SEC play.
Yeah, I think this line is almost perfect. That's what I'm struggling with because I do think Ole Miss is going to win this one going away. But yeah, I think that I feel like this is almost like reverse, like it's like rat poison or yummy rat poison where it's like, oh, we need to like get all of our playbook going. And so instead of doing the stuff that's easy, that works, we need to get ready for the SEC schedule. Because to our point earlier, they were not blocking those Tulane dudes. Those dudes were having a good day.
Experience, but
yeah, no, 100%. And like, not to dump on teams outside of the SEC, but again, if you're playing, one of these big teams that is used to getting after you, especially the angry ones that are not doing well right now, I think that, I think their lane is going to be like kind of in the back, like workshopping some stuff. So because of that, they won't cover.
Yeah, the scheme in the ground game, I think, will be better. I think there will be a little bit more creative with it. Maybe having Trey Harris back as well. He was banged up in that game last week. He's expected to be a go for this one. The stud transfer receiver. Maybe having him go and being able to kind of stretch the field a little bit more. Some of these passing game options that are developing for Jackson Dart opens up holes a little bit more, and they're able to take advantage of that. Game of the weekend in the SEC. Can we call it that? Let's call it that. I don't care. We're going to go for it. Tennessee, 6.5-point favorite in the Swamp at Florida. The over-under I have, Will, is 27 Tennessee points. Seems kind of low for the Tennessee standard, number one offense in America last year. The last time that Tennessee scored 27 points in the Swamp, it was Spurrier's last game in the Swamp. Yeah. Think about that. 22 years ago.
There's no way. There have been so many bad Florida teams. You're going to tell me they haven't scored 27 points in the Swamp? I feel like LSU did that like last year. It's not hard.
27 points in the Swamp. Florida's defense, though, for the vast majority of the 21st century has been really good. Obviously, the last few years, it has not been up to that standard. So there's part of that, but still, you kind of wonder, if not now, then when? Maybe the theme of today's episode, if not now, then when? And 20 years ago, and what's going to be very well documented going into this one throughout this game, 20 years ago was the last time that Tennessee won in the Swamp. 2003.
Jeez.
I was in middle school. I was just starting 8th grade. You were third grade? Is that right?
Yep. Third grade.
Who can forget? None of the
Just
players.
in love with Nick Saban. Having a great time.
Life was.
I knew.
Life was different. Just a little bit different then. No player on either sideline, unless I'm forgetting somebody, and there's like some 34-year-old backup punter that I just haven't accounted for. None of those players were old enough to remember the last time that Tennessee won in the Swamp. Even Joe Milton, 6th year of college, Joe Milton. He was only 3 years old for that football game. Speaking of Joe Milton, Will, trivia question for you. How many times has Joe Milton ever been asked to go start and win in a hostile road atmosphere? What's the number?
Oh man, Joe Milton,
including Michigan, by the way, including Michigan, the Tennessee,
right, but not counting the bowl game.
Not a hostile atmosphere. That's a neutral site.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna say like 3.
That's 3 too many, Will.
Oh gosh, 0.
It's 0. Because think about this. His 3 road starts in 2020 at Michigan were in front of empty stadiums because of COVID. At Rutgers that year was actually where he lost his starting job because he got off to a really, really bad start in that one. And they're like, we got to beat Rutgers. We got to figure something out here. His lone road start last year was at Vandy. I'm not calling Vandy a hostile atmosphere, especially when a good chunk of those seats are probably being filled by the Tennessee faithful. Okay? Just
right.
Not trying to disrespect Vandy here, but you get what I'm saying. This is a major, major fork in the road for Joe Milton in his career. If he cannot lead a victory in this game and end the drought in Gainesville, and that hits 20 years, 2 decades, you can close your eyes and you can hear the chants right now. We want Nico. That's coming. This can get ugly in a hurry for Joe Milton. It really can. It's not that I think Josh Heupel benches Joe Milton if he loses this football game. That's not what I'm saying. Because in Josh Heupel's ideal world, and I'll continue to bang this drum, Joe Milton starts every football game this year, and Nico is doing a little bit of garbage time stuff. Maybe he gets more meaningful reps against UConn or something like that. But I do think that all of the preseason buzz for Joe Milton is out the window if they lose this game. And each overthrow or mistake that he makes afterwards, especially in front of those home fans, that's going to be magnified. This is a huge game, and I'm fascinated to see how Josh Heupel and Joey Halsley, how they approach the play calling in this one. Do they dial up the deep shots? In Joe Milton's lone career road start in front of fans, the Vandy game last year, he threw that dime to Jalen Hyatt on the opening drive. Beautiful pass. Kind of settled him down into the game. Didn't really take a whole lot of deep shots after that. The game didn't really dictate that because of the conditions. Maybe you take a chance from the start and that settles him down. And even if it's a drop, if it's an on-target play, that gets him into the flow of the game. Or do you trust that your tempo with your ground game, what you've been able to do to start off the year, that can do the heavy lifting against a Florida defense that is probably lacking depth and can be on its heels? I'm going to say something that I'm going to regret. I know I'm going to regret this. We're going to come on the pod on Sunday. I'm going to say, Will, I am an idiot. I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. I'm picking Florida because I don't trust Joe Milton. I'm sticking with my preseason pick, and I'm picking Florida to win this game. And I know, Tennessee fans, you're saying, well, why do you trust this Florida offense? Why in the world would you trust them? Won't they be overwhelmed by these edge rushers, Tyler Barron, James Pierce? Those guys have looked great to start off the year. Yep. Yeah, they could be. They really could be. But Tennessee hasn't faced anyone that can actually run the football. And I think a healthier Florida offensive line is going to play better than it did a couple of weeks ago at Utah. And if you're Billy Napier, you are riding that running back duo into the ground. They could have 40 combined carries in this one. It would not surprise me. I think you're trying to keep that Tennessee offense off the field. You're trying to give your defense a breather as much as humanly possible. This is a gotta-have-it game for Billy Napier. I'm not saying gotta have it in terms of his job security. 31 million reasons why he's not getting fired this year, in my opinion, but you got to get that support back. You've got to get some momentum and got to get people to stop talking about whether or not you're good enough to survive that buyout. That's the biggest thing. As bad as Florida has been the last 2 years, in its first 2-year stretch with consecutive losing records since what administration, Will? What administration?
Jimmy Carter.
Amen. They're still 11-3 at home in that 2-year stretch. And those two of those losses were to eventual SEC West champs. So I think Tennessee, in that atmosphere, on the road, they play from behind for far too much of the night. Joe Milton presses too much. Tennessee's not able to end the drought. Florida wins this game 21-17. And I'm an idiot.
I have been staring at this history of Tennessee and Florida, cackling under my breath because I can't imagine a team going that long without scoring 27 points. And I just want to say the 0-3 game, they won. They scored 24 points.
I know.
In 0-1 was the last time they scored 27 points on the road in Gainesville. A feat LSU has done twice in a row. LSU scored 21 points in one quarter last year. I am so blown away by, I know that Florida is a tradition-rich program that has been better than Tennessee for 20 years. I fully get it. There have been several numerous 4-win seasons and sub-500 seasons in there. And I'm thinking about those teams. I'm like, yep, they won in a walk-off in 2017, 26-20. And then, they lost. Florida won in Gainesville 28-27 in 2015. So it's a push. It's not an over. I am so blown away by just this team. And that was what we always talked about. And why I was kind of early on the Mullen thing is look, Kentucky and Tennessee are losing to Florida every year, no matter what. That's how it was for my entire childhood. It was 2 teams that were Mississippi State. I am so blown away. And it's so funny that Josh Heupel has kind of gotten this moniker of Giant Slayer because he beat Alabama for the first time in 15 years.
It was the first time since 06. Yeah. So first time in 16 years. Yeah, 16
Too
years.
much math for me, brother. Anyway, so I think it's funny that Josh Heupel is now just the guy. And they tried so many different guys. They went the Dooley way with the coaching tree. They went the asparagus way. They went all kinds of different ways. They went Butch Jones. They tried every single way to get this righted. And it's, of course, Josh Heupel from UCF is the one who comes in there. It's just I think I'll beat Alabama. Yeah. And I'm actually, I feel the opposite. I think they're going to light it up. I think they're going to break that stretch. I think that it's just, it's the old broken clock is right twice. It's that somehow with this coach, with this team, they are finally definitively better than Florida. They need to just capitalize on it. There have been a couple of years in there talking about the Alvin Kamara season that was a little bit disappointing. That was 2016. And they beat Florida that year. And it's they have to actually start building something and not just kind of getting washed away with the tides. And I think Heupel, funny enough, given how his offense works, has done a good job of doing that, of building something sustainable. Like, because when he came in, I was like, he's not going to be able to beat these big teams. But yeah, I think that like this is actually kind of the squad. And again, I want to be clear, most of this is me just kind of picking against Florida after what I've seen so far out of them. I mean, they had like a second or third string quarterback named Bryson, like them up against Utah. Like, I would say what you will about Joe Milton and Josh Heupel, they're better than Utah offensively with a backup quarterback is all I'm going to say. So yeah, I think that like this is going to be, I think it's going to be a fun game, but I will take Tennessee to win. And yeah, I mean, 6.5 feels like a cover, honestly.
Tennessee's better team. Better team. If they're playing at a neutral site, I'm taking Tennessee. If they're playing in Knoxville, I'm taking Tennessee. Yeah. I just do not trust Joe Milton on the road. If you are going to win a game in a hostile atmosphere, I have to trust you that you have a guy that's going to go in there and make big time throws. And right now, that is just not a place that I'm at. And the first couple of weeks have not inspired enough confidence yet to make me feel like he's there. Maybe that happens. Maybe that's a different discussion after this game. But man, there's just something about that history that's hanging over. And I think I misspoke at the top by saying that last time that they scored 27 points. I should have said the last time they scored more than 27 points in the Swamp, but you get what I'm saying. It is just one of those things that for whatever reason, the college football gods, they have found a way. They have always just found a way. The 2017 game with the Felipe Hail Mary, that one is like, gosh, because Florida was so bad that year. They
were a 4-win team. That was their fourth win.
Tennessee was somehow worse though that year. It's like these chances to catch Florida. And it's like, all right, now Tennessee, you should have the chance. If not now, then when? That's the biggest question. But I'm excited for this one. Really, really excited for this one. Cannot wait for that on Saturday night.
Yep, it was a 3. They had lost to Michigan in like kind of it was a week 1 game, and they beat Tennessee, won at Kentucky, beat Vandy, were ranked, came to or hosted LSU. Lost that one, but yeah, they just didn't win again until November 18th. They just kept losing. So like that one little game is such a fun little vacuum of that season, because at that time it felt like Florida had figured something out with Felipe Franks, and it was like, oh, this is the game the good teams win. And yeah, I think completely I agree with your point about that. It's like Tennessee being the better team than Florida has had no bearing on this rivalry. It's a little bit like LSU and Alabama, where it's like LSU would have these teams that you just felt so good about, and like I was saying, the drums would hit, it would be over. That's how Tennessee has been. So this is the lowest we think that Billy Napier will be at Florida. They need to win this game badly. I think they'll do it, because even next year they won't have Graham Mertz. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll have something to. I could see them winning in Knoxville next year, but they got to get Florida when they're down and like establish a hierarchy, because with Georgia running the division, you don't want to be one of those 3 teams just like fighting for second place. You want to be like, hey, it's Georgia, then it's us. We're on the way. We're selling hopium, not like we can't beat Florida in Gainesville.
Yeah, that's would be huge for Billy Napier. Yeah, Graham Mertz still has another year of eligibility after this year, so theoretically, I know this is not like a one and done. This doesn't have to be a one and done situation, because don't just
never work on that 401k.
He needs to at some point. Big game for Graham Mertz, needless to say. Yeah. Okay, lock of the week. Turns out, Will, UTEP was basura, very much so. Your boy took a massive L. Lock of the week. Not off to the best start this year. That's okay. We love a comeback. 0-2 start.
Flashback to the top of the pod. You talking about calling your shot. You're like, you know what? I love Utah this week. I was like, yeah, he does love Utah. We love Utah. Let's do it.
No. UTEP, not Utah. UTEP.
Oh, UTEP. Sorry. UTEP.
Yeah. He's picking UTEP to beat Northwestern. Bad idea. Very, very bad idea. Still love Utah. Utah's America's team. Come on, let's not get it twisted. Let's go full sicko. Let's lean into this one. If there's ever a time to fade me, now is it. I'm warning you. I was a 28.5 point favorite against Western Michigan, Will.
Okay.
It's a number that we're going to talk about with Bear in a bit here. I am thinking the drive for 325 for Brian Ferentz and his job, I think it needs a major boost this week. Iowa, dare I say, has to run it up. They have to run it up, because you're not scoring 29 points a week in Big Ten play. And I don't know what the number breakdown is or what they currently need to be able to make that happen in order for him to keep his job. But sooner or later, you got to start cashing in on these opportunities. Haven't hit 25 points yet. Western Michigan led up 48 to Syracuse last week. They let up 48 to Syracuse. Real bad. I will not watch a second of this game. There's no way. I am not putting myself through that. There's no way. I will just be checking the score. And if I see that Iowa's sitting there with 10 points in the fourth quarter and their only touchdown is from a special teams or a defensive play, I'm going to say, Connor, you're the biggest idiot on the face of the earth. But I'm going to say Iowa's going to cover minus 28.5. Well, I am. This is what it's come to. This is how desperate I am when I reach 0-2 in lock of the week. And if I fall to 0-4 in lock of the week, a significant change will be made that we'll have some fun with. We'll get the people involved. We'll make this a more interactive process, and it'll be very tongue in cheek moving forward. Because if I'm 0-4, God help us all. But if you like fun, fade me now. That's my advice.
I was watching this Iowa State game with someone who just like didn't really understand football, and my way of explaining it was just like Iowa is like a team of chunky cats playing football. Like every once in a while, it's like Rudy. They'll do something and like kind of shock you every once in a while, but play to play, it's a lot of just kind of oh Lord, he come in 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and then those tight ends are obviously the showstoppers. But yeah, I'm so fascinated by like new look, like disappointing dad Kirk Ferentz, like where he actually has to care about what his son's doing. Like, hey, what are your grades looking like, son? Like, yeah, I'm so ready for that drama because it's almost set up to fail, right? Because if you think about some of the teams that are in the Big Ten, like you're right, they're going to need to run it up. So I was gaslit last week. I will be gaslit again. Let's do it.
Minus 28.5 for Iowa, man.
Jeez,
unbelievable. Yep, that's what we're doing. We're just going for it. All right, let's kick it to Laura Rutledge and Bear Fallica. Great stuff with both of them. Had never had Laura on before, so it was really fun to talk with her about different career things, a little bit of Florida stuff, a whole lot more with her. And then with Bear, talked about his transition to Fox, some Colorado things, and then a lot of gambling talk. So first Laura, then Bear. I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is TikTok star Laura Rutledge. I'm not even on TikTok, and I know that you're big. But yeah, we don't need to talk about that as much. I'm sure you get enough grief about that from your coworkers. You're here today on behalf of the Honey Baked Ham Company. I am a huge ham guy. I go ham on ham. I prefer ham. I prefer ham to turkey at Thanksgiving. I love ham and my eggs. All that stuff. Like, tell me about the new things that Honey Baked Ham Company is doing, because they've got these new tailgate packs, and it reminded me the versatility of ham is off the charts.
Oh my goodness. I love that you just said all of that. I'm a ham girl, so we can totally relate on this. And it's funny because I think a lot of people think about a tailgate and they're like, oh, the chicken wings and the burgers, and those are all great. But Honey Baked Ham actually did a survey and polled a bunch of fans, and 85% of fans want ham at their tailgates. So that's why they came up with these new tailgate packs, which are fantastic. They're super convenient. I love all of them. There are 4 of them, but I think the highlights for me are the Pick 2 slider pack, which comes with these sliders that are just super easy to bake. You've got your ham and Swiss, you've got turkey and cheddar, so you get 2 different types. They come with chips, so everything's just right there. You throw them in the oven, and you've got your tailgate ready to go, and everyone thinks that you went to a whole lot of trouble. There's actually this garlic herb butter that you pour over the top, so it's unbelievable. It looks like you're a gourmet cook. So the half ham playmaker pack is the other one that I really love. Bone and half ham. So, I mean, you're rolling up with something that's like, man, this is a holiday. This is a special occasion. People can do kind of whatever they want. They can just eat the ham right off of the bone, which is something that I do. My husband and I, it's actually really funny because we have a lot of ham in the house. Thanks to Honey Baked. And we will like catch each other in the fridge, just pulling ham off of the half ham and just eating it. But that one also comes with some good sides as well. So just really something for everyone at your tailgate, which I think makes a big difference, whether you're tailgating or home gating.
Do you ever just stay at a tailgate at SEC Nation? You're like, I'm just going to stick around for like an hour or so. I imagine because your schedule is crazy busy, but especially now that you've got this going, just like roll up with some honey baked ham and be like, hey guys, I brought the party.
Yeah, so I mean, yes, the answer is yes. I love a tailgate, as you know, and it's actually cool because Honey Baked Ham is making tailgate stops. So they're going to some of the best and the biggest college football destinations. They're actually going to be at Florida, Tennessee this weekend. So if anyone's going there, you just stop by their location, and they're giving out free samples and gift cards and all sorts of fun things. So the tailgate tour is going all over the country this college football season. But I love to roll up on people's tailgates, and people are so nice. I mean, the SEC is amazing. We'll be, at our site doing SEC Nation or whatever's going on, and then we'll just kind of like walk off the set, and people are handing us food and drinks and whatever. And it's sad because sometimes I'm like, oh no, I have to go to the airport, but sometimes we don't. We have a little bit of time. So I love to interact with fans in those times and also eat all of their food.
You met your husband at a tailgate. It's got to be a place that's really special to you, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that is very true. Tuscaloosa, 2011, Alabama LSU, and we met at the Alabama baseball tailgate, which is the tailgate. It's actually pretty cool. The guy who was running that tailgate, he doesn't do it anymore, but his name's Roger. And I just saw Roger in Tuscaloosa last weekend, and we're always like, Roger, thanks. I'm not sure if we would have found each other otherwise, but we totally met at a tailgate, and it's really funny for us to reflect on because I think that'll always be part of our story, but we still love tailgating all the time. So it's kind of like we just have kept that going for now 10 years. We're coming up on our 10th anniversary. We got married when we were 25. So here we are 10 years later, just old farts, but it is fun to think about.
I appreciate you doing this because I know your schedule. We were talking about this before we came on. Your schedule is crazy busy, doing NFL Live, SEC Nation duties. You've got baby Jack in the picture now. I imagine everything is just all over the place. I don't know if people understand how crazy your schedule is in a given week with all the traveling. Can you give me kind of the weekly rundown of what that looks like right now in season?
Yeah, I mean, look, I will preface all of it by saying I feel just really lucky to be able to do this. I'm always pinching myself, like I can't even believe that this is my life and this is my job, and it's so cool. But yes, it's a lot. So like I'll just give you this week for example. So yesterday, I was at Monday Night Football, Jets Bills. Crazy game. Cannot believe what happened to Aaron Rodgers. But I did Good Morning America from there. And then I did NFL Live. And then I was able to get back home in Connecticut like late last night. Then I'll be here in Connecticut hosting NFL Live Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is normal. And then Friday, I will fly from here to Starkville. So probably leave here around like 3 a.m. because it's very hard to get from Connecticut to Starkville. I don't know. I think I'm probably the only person that's going to be going from Connecticut to Starkville that particular day. And then I'll be there for SEC Nation and cannot wait for Mississippi State LSU. It's going to be a blast. Then from there on Saturday, I will go to Charlotte because I am calling the Monday Night Football game between the Panthers and the Saints the following Monday. So we'll go do Monday Night Football there and then get home some point Tuesday morning and continue on with NFL Live and then to our next SEC Nation destination. And then we have another Monday Night Football game for the next 2 weeks after that. The one at the end of September is actually in London. So that's a whole other wrinkle to the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, it is just, it's a total disaster at all times. I really admire parents so much. Everyone's busy. Everyone's got so much going on. And somehow we all like sort of make this work. And in my case, the emphasis is on the sorta because most of the time it's a total mess. But I really just admire everyone who's trying to do this because it is hard.
When you became host of NFL Live, I bet a lot of people were wondering if it meant that your days doing SEC Network, SEC Nation stuff, if that was in the rearview mirror, because we've seen so many people kind of make that career progression, understandably so. And it is a lot to juggle being on top of college things and NFL things. And I'm amazed when people like Booger or Dan Orlovsky, when they can do both, that's just a testament to how dedicated they are. And you have taken that on. What went into that decision process to kind of stick with SEC Nation and SEC Network?
Yeah, I love NFL Live and I love being a part of that show and it's been so much fun. But my heart and soul is in the SEC, and I just could not think about stepping away from it. It's just something that I never want to do. I love it. I always want to be part of it. I mean, they're going to have to like roll me out of there in a wheelchair someday because it is just, it's such a special conference. It's such a special fan base. And it truly is, from a purely football standpoint, the best of the best in all of college football. And one of the things that I've found is for me, there is a huge tie-in of the familiarity between these SEC players that go on to have success at the NFL level. You know, our guys in the SEC are the best, and they end up being the best in the NFL as well. And so that's been a help. But it is, I mean, somebody was asking me last night, you know, how am I keeping all these things straight? And I'm like, well, my brain is literally scrambled eggs. Like, I have no idea what's going on most of the time in life. Like, I'm just forgetting things. I'm like, did I make Reese's lunch? I don't know. I got to go look in the fridge. I can't even remember doing it. And somehow I did, but probably while I was doing that, I was thinking about what we were going to do in the B segment of SEC Nation on Saturday. And then also thinking about all of the different angles that we need to take on, you know, this coming week of games in the NFL. So it's just like a constant craziness. And but it's one that I love, and it's one that really means a lot to me. I mean, the other thing I would say too about the SEC, sorry, this is a long answer, but it's important. The first group that really took a chance on me as a host and wanted to give me an opportunity was the group associated with SEC Nation. And so that's why here I am, you know, 9 years later on this show, and having been able to do it really almost like growing up in a way as a broadcaster on that show. It means so much to me that I really could never imagine stepping away from it. I just want to be so loyal to the people who did take a chance on me and gave me a launching point in my career.
For a lot of people listening to this, their first kind of association with you probably began on the Paul Finebaum show. And you start off by flying on your own dime to Charlotte to be able to do this. What told you that was the leap that you needed to make at that point in your career?
Well, first of all, the fact that Paul Finebaum doesn't need anyone with him. I mean, he's Paul Finebaum. He's a standalone. He is the mouth of the South and one of the most recognizable faces and voices in all of college football. So the fact that he had asked me to do it and that he wanted me there and he was going to support me in that, I think it made it to where I didn't feel like there was another choice. I thought, I'm going to get myself there. I don't care what it has to be and what it takes. And a lot of times I would drive, because we lived in Atlanta at that time. So I would drive, you know, the 4 hours between Atlanta and Charlotte. But, you know, I think I realized that I was doing well as a reporter. I had a few opportunities to work on my hosting, but, you know, in that age range of like 27, 28, I was thinking, I'm ready to do more, you know, and I have a knowledge base and opinions and connections and storytelling, and also just wanted to showcase some personality. I think sometimes when you're reporting, it's hard to show what personality you have because you're just delivering information, which you should be, right? So no one wants, you know, people just clowning around down there. So I did think it was a chance to kind of have a little bit of fun with Paul and I's relationship, which truly, people are like, you guys really that close to friends? We are such close friends, and he's been so wonderful to me. And I wanted that challenge. And I came from radio. That was my background in college. So I loved the fact that it was radio and the TV component is there, but it's truly a radio show, which is so spontaneous and so fun. And, you know, one of the coolest things that Paul did, there were a lot of people that would call in, and there's still people that, you know, I hear this every day, like, oh, you're a woman, you don't deserve to be here, you don't know anything, and all that. And so I would be kind of faced with that real time. Like, people would call in and I would just have to respond. And, you know, Paul would never jump in. He would sit back and he would let me handle it. And I think some people would wonder, well, why wouldn't he come in and defend you? And it was really cool that he didn't, because it was just like, no, she's got it. She can handle it. And I appreciated his endorsement and my credibility in that way. But it really was, I think, a big difference maker that I will never be able to accurately repay him for in my career.
Yeah, you're not a damsel in distress. You don't need to be
Right.
saved. Like you're smart enough where you can defend yourself in that spot.
Yeah.
A lot of people probably won't make this comment, but it almost, your relationship with Paul, and he's told me about this over the years as well, it almost kind of reminds me of like the Herb Street Corso relationship, where you guys really play off each other, and you could just tell there's like this genuine, parent child sort of relationship or something like that. Is there a
Yeah.
story that kind of sums that up, that relationship of what it's meant to you, either personally or professionally?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many. I'll choose a funny one because we're going to Starkville this week again. But we were in Starkville. This has been a few years ago, and Paul is very antsy about he's got to get to the airport. Like anytime we're flying out, he wants to just be there early. And a lot of times we're trying to make a quick flight, and so he gets freaked out. So we were sharing a car, and I was driving us to the Starkville Airport, the Golden Triangle Airport, which if you haven't been, it's worth seeing because where else can you see a Golden Triangle Airport? But anyway, we're going there. And we were trying to get out of campus, and we were just getting blocked everywhere we were going. They had the barricades up, and we were just hitting dead ends, and he is getting progressively more upset, as we go. So I'm like, it's okay, Paul. It's okay. We're still okay on time, but I know how he is. And we're not, in his mind, we're not okay on time. So we finally hit this one barricade, and these people weren't letting us through. And so I had stopped the car because I was trying to figure out how to navigate us out of there. And all of a sudden, Paul gets out of the car and slams the door shut. And I look up, and he's gone, and he is moving the barricade himself. And Paul, as we know, might weigh 130 pounds. He is not your strongest person. And he is just like manhandling this barricade. So he moves it out of the way. So then there wasn't somebody there at first. As he's making his way back to the car, somebody appears and just moves it back. So like, he gets back in the car and he's like, oh, I moved that. Why is it back? We were dying, and he was so mad. So I couldn't laugh. So I was just like, I don't know what we're doing. We finally get to the airport. We're there in plenty of time. We get to the airport. And when I tell you, it took Paul probably a half hour to get through security. It's a very small security, but I don't know what it is about him and TSA. We have this running joke that he always gets searched by TSA. So they kept searching and kept searching. They were looking for something. Couldn't find it. I still don't know what it was. I told him later it was because he didn't pick Mississippi State that day. I forget who they were playing, but they were playing somebody. He picked the opponent, and they were making him pay at TSA. But he was getting so frustrated. We've laughed about it later, but in the moment, it was just like, I was like, I have to get him on this plane. We got to get out of here. This is bad news. Starkville didn't know what it was dealing with there with Mr. Finebaum.
Grumpy Paul is fun. It's very
Grumpy
fun.
Paul, man, it's a thing.
Yeah, I remember seeing it at SEC Media Days, probably 5 years ago, and it was when I was first getting to know him, and I was like, "Oh, just get out of his way." When he's in that mode,
oh yeah,
it's a different level. But obviously, you guys have had so many great moments together. I want to talk a little bit about your alma mater, Florida. Have you had a chance to watch Swamp Kings yet? And if so, by the way, how were you not interviewed for that? They didn't interview a lot of people. What was up with that?
I guess they didn't know. I mean, I had a lot of stories to tell, and I was definitely there during that time. So it's funny. I have not watched it yet because I don't have any time, but I really want to watch it. I've heard from a lot of people that a lot of things were left out, which is it's probably because they didn't interview me, but I don't know. Just kidding. But no, it is going to be fascinating, I think, for me to watch it. I mean, being there. So in 2008, I was a sophomore in college, and I worked for the on-campus radio station. So I was covering that team, and we were at practice every day. And yeah, there are lots of stories to tell about that time in Florida for sure.
Can you tell one that SEC network would not give you a call about? Because I mean, it's Netflix. Netflix wanted to handle the doc, so I don't think you'd get in too much trouble by telling a story.
No, I mean, I think, one of the most interesting things about that team is that those guys were just on campus, which I know that sounds normal, but it's just so unusual when you think about the star power. And so one of the funniest things around that time was that everyone knew that Tebow liked Chick-fil-A, which now he would never eat Chick-fil-A because it has bread on it. But at the time, he was eating some Chick-fil-A. So there was a Chick-fil-A at the Hub on campus. It was called the Hub. And I am not exaggerating that it got to the point where you could not even enter the Hub because so many students would be gathered around just waiting for Tim to go to Chick-fil-A, trying to get a glimpse at him. And I mean, there were so many times when my friends would say, "Oh, it's about time that he would normally go to Chick-fil-A. Like, we have to go over to the hub. And I'm like, guys, this is weird. Like what are we stalking this guy? Like what's going to happen even if, we get over there? And that was just a regular day. And, I think now there's certainly star power on these campuses and all that, but I don't know that there's anything equivalent to what this was. And those guys were just so recognizable. I mean, you'd have the Pouncey twins scootering around campus, like these huge offensive linemen, just like on the same scooter at times, which is, I'm sure, a safety hazard. But they were just everywhere, and I think, I don't know. I'm just not sure that we're going to see star power like that just amongst students on campus like it was for those Florida teams that, ultimately went on to have a ton of success. And truly, I mean, Tim has always been, sort of this like larger than life rock star. And I witnessed that firsthand, being a student at Florida during that time.
Did you know Tim at all during school? And then how weird is it that your paths cross the way that they have?
I know, now I would consider him like family. So I don't think he would know who I was, but I was there interviewing every day. We would have media availability, after practice for Florida every single day, and those teams were so big time that people wanted that coverage. I mean, it could be the most random thing. And during football season, we were daily, pumping out content and putting it on the radio and also online. So I interviewed him a lot, or at least I would have, like my hand hanging in the media scrum and trying to hold it up, to see if I could get the audio, throwing elbows at people trying to get in there. But he probably, I've asked him about it before. I've showed him some pictures actually before of me, like you could see me like, trying to get a recording. And he's like, oh yeah, I think I remember you, but he probably doesn't. He's probably just being nice. So yeah, we've in the aftermath, we've become very good friends.
How optimistic are you that Florida's home winning streak against Tennessee is going to continue on Saturday?
Oh man. So it's funny because if you would ask me this time last week, I would have said I am not optimistic. But Jordan Rogers actually did an excellent tape breakdown on our show, showcasing the couple of plays in the Florida-Utah game that really were the difference makers. And I think, as a Florida fan, I try to be unbiased, but obviously went to school there. We look at things so dismally because of what it's been. And so it's almost like anything that was a small mistake becomes magnified to us. And that's just the way it is right now. But he pointed out that there were a few steps out of position. There were a few small things that had they gone a different way, Florida's right there in the mix of the game, could have won the game, on the road against a really talented Utah team and a great defense, which isn't necessarily in line with some of the thoughts around the Pac-12, but this is a team that's built differently, and we've seen that. So I don't know, like part of me wants to, and maybe I'm going to be mad at myself for this, but I want to be a little bit optimistic about them against Tennessee this week, because I do think that atmosphere, hopefully fans will show up. I think that atmosphere is extremely difficult to play in. And maybe Florida will come out and say, all right, everyone's down on us, let's show a little something. I think there's more to be excited about offensively than we're giving them credit for. They did move the ball down the field a little bit better than they had, previously, which it could only go up from where it was. So anyway, I would say I'm like lukewarm optimistic, which is probably an oxymoron.
I think that's perfectly fair. And I would say, yeah, really similar things about the offense and the progression and the fact that, even in the midst of Florida's worst 2-year stretch since the Jimmy Carter administration, they're still 11-3 at home during that 2-year stretch, which not so bad when you think about it. Yeah. I always joke with Jordan and Paul about the times that they've gotten a call from a school about something critical that they said on air. And I think it's a credit to SEC Network that they allow their hosts, their anchors and analysts to sort of give their opinions somewhat unfiltered about, and not just be like a mouthpiece for the conference. Have you ever gotten one of those calls from a school?
So yes, I got a call from South Carolina, like years and years ago. I want to say this was in like 2015. So it would have been the second year of the network even existing. And it was, something around something I'd said on a game, which of course at that point I was a reporter. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm like getting fired over this. I was very worried about it. Since then, I haven't really, but I also think I'm in a position where I do give opinions, and especially on Paul's show, like when I still talk with him, I will, but I'm also more just like setting people up for their opinions. So I feel like I don't get as much of that shrapnel as they do, but yeah, that does happen a lot. It's interesting because you're right. Like we're given a good bit of leeway to, and I think it's what makes the conference great. It's why we have, and our network great is why we have some really good analysts on our network and super talented. Some of the best that we have in all of college football are on the SEC network. And it's a legitimate network. We're not just there being mouthpieces for the league. We love the SEC, but we also can, give our actual opinions.
You do have a really high approval rating, though. I mean, I think it's next to impossible to have a high approval rating, especially in the internet age. And the stuff with Mina that came out after she got her extension with the stupid tweet that everybody that was making the rounds, all that from a parody account, but whatever. I mean, like you see that people will be really dumb on the internet, and you have found a way to navigate that extremely well. Do you care about being well liked?
I do. If I wish I could be like, no, I don't care, whatever. But it does bother me, I think, sometimes when I've gotten the normal hate and just the stuff that happens, in our business. And it's funny because I've come to, I think, a better place where I don't let some of the things affect me as much. But there is something different about the critique that women get versus men. And I think anyone who knows me, and I've tried to like sort of say this over the years, I don't ever try to sit here and say, oh, well, I don't have this because I'm a woman, or I just don't like to lean into that. I'd rather just be more knowledgeable and classy and just focus on what I'm doing. And that's, I think, served me well. But there is like a bit of an extra personal level to some of the critique that can really be upsetting, and that's been something that I think over the years I've gotten better at just ignoring and not taking it personally. There have been so many times when, I've worn something and someone's just made some ugly comment about it. And then I'm like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't wear that again. And I think now I'm in a better place to say, no, I'm going to wear it and take that, random person in your mom's basement. But I do care, I think, about what people think about me, in the sense that I just hope people would know that I like want to be nice to them, that I really do enjoy interacting with people. I think when there have been times that some of the most hurtful things have been that people have said, oh, well, you're fake, or you don't actually feel this way, or, things like that. I think that bothers me more than anything. And if anyone like comes after my friends, I can't stand that. I'm like, don't get my people, because I will have to say something. And what Mina Kimes deals with, I don't even know how she deals with it, and she handles it so well. And I think has found ways to be funny about how she claps back in certain instances. But yeah, it's a weird world. Like, I never thought that would be something I'd be dealing with in life, and I think I often remind myself that almost as a little bit of a healing way to think about it. Like, I never even thought I'd be dealing with this, so why even care, but yeah, it's interesting for sure.
Not an easy thing to navigate. Definitely
Yeah.
understand that. This has been great. I want to get you out of here with some rapid fire, just 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
All right. Your favorite non-Florida school to visit for SEC Nation is where?
LSU.
That's easy. Don't even need an explanation.
Love it.
Yeah. When you took that hit on the sideline in that Georgia game, how quickly did you realize that you were about to go viral?
Well, the funny thing is, they did not want the video out, but I did, because I was like, this is funny. Like, I can't believe this happened. And, I had to sign all these papers and be like, no, I'm fine. Like, I'm not, I was like bruised, but I wasn't that hurt. Thank God. But then I realized, okay, yeah, people might think this is funny. I had no idea it would go as viral as it went, though. That was a shocker to me.
Because it wasn't like live game footage. It was, they were setting up the shot, right?
Yeah, we were setting up the shot. They were coming to me. The funny thing that, like, never is really included in that is they were the whistle had been blown, so that's why I turned my back to the field. Whistle's blown, plays over, whatever. Obviously it wasn't. We couldn't see anything that was coming our way, the way the Georgia sideline's set up. So I turn my back, I'm about to go, and then boom, I get hit. And I didn't know what happened. Like, honestly, I had no idea what happened. I was like, what was that? But I knew they were coming to me. So they had it on camera, that I had been hit. So everyone in my ear is like, oh my God, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, let me do my report. So I did the report. And then they were like, oh my God, you just got nailed. And at that point, like, it started to hit me. I looked down at my foot, and like my whole boot was like scraped. I thought my foot was broken. We did x-rays at halftime too. That was funny. Georgia was so nice about that. They let me get x-rays because they were worried that, but yeah, that's the part that's like never included, that I did the report, and then we were like, whoa, what just went down? Crazy.
SEC toughness through and through.
Oh, you know it. Yeah.
Would you ever, okay, maybe this is a better question. What's the thing in your career that you haven't done yet that you still want to do?
Ooh, that's a great one. Okay, so I haven't produced a show. I would love to produce. Like, I have a lot of ideas for shows. Some of them are sports related, some of them aren't. But I love the production side and the writing side so much that I think that's something down the road that I'd really be interested in.
Interesting. True or false? Competing for Miss America is harder than handling NFL Live and SEC Nation duties.
True. Definitely harder. I
just watched Miss Congeniality again last week. I would confirm. Woo! Very much true. Yeah.
There's a lot to that.
Yeah. Last one for you. This is just a simple yes or no. Can Reese do picks for me? Because I'm really, really bad at it and she's not.
Yes. Okay. I don't know how she's this good, but she is. And she will definitely offer up her services to you. Just let me know.
Is Jack going to be doing picks as well with
Jack,
Reese?
So, Jack can't do much right now, but he's learning from Reese. So at some point we're going to just pass the baton to him. But right now he just kind of is sitting there like, he's only 3 months old, but I'm going to be interested like this season because he's been part of her picks. I'm going to be interested to see when he starts to get a little bit more vocal and like tells her what's up and makes his own picks. So we're waiting for that. We'll see when we don't know when it's going to happen. We have no idea what we're doing. We're going to just see what happens as we go along.
That's the only way to do it at this point with all you got going on, for sure. Understand. Really appreciate the time. Everyone should get their hands on the new tailgate packs from the Honey Baked Ham Company. Awesome stuff. Laura, we will do this again soon sometime.
I can't wait. Thank you so much.
I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is good friend Chris Bear Fallica. Bear, I got to ask you, this is the first time that I've had you on since your big move to Fox, which you're now doing a bunch of things. It's awesome to see. You are all over all the Fox platforms right now. And I texted you over the summer. You were on your way to Paris, which casual, just sick brag. Just drop that in there. No big deal.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Can't talk right now, on the way to Paris. If I could text that to any human being ever, I would do that. I would actually just go out of my way to text people while I was on that flight to Paris. So you're good for that one. You're doing Big Noon Kickoff. You are hosting Bear Bets with Jeff Schwartz. I've got a bone to pick with you, though. You realize you are hosting a show with one of the few people in the industry who probably has more bear features than you.
Yeah, that is Day a little bit bigger, and he certainly has a lot more hair than I do as well. And we haven't gotten like the grumpy grizzle factor down yet, but in terms of body size and hair, he's definitely got me beat. But yeah, it was funny. I remember flying to Paris just beforehand, and you're reaching out. Can I rehash one thing I wanted to get into before we get into hardcore college football and everything here?
Let's do it.
When I was on with you a couple of years ago, you had asked me like if I could equate myself with a character on The Office, and I said I'm scared to admit this, but I haven't watched the series yet. I'm going to come back and answer that question now. I am definitely Stanley Hudson. That is who I am. That's me.
Okay, so you've gotten through. Did you go all the way through season 9?
I've gotten through like 5 seasons, I think, and then then summer came and Australia came, and I kind of got derailed. But just from the first few seasons, I'm absolutely Stanley.
Okay, so you've nailed that, and I'm proud of you. I can't believe that you remembered that. That just speaks to your memory.
I took it as a personal challenge to be like, all right, and the next time I hop on with him, I need to have an answer. I never like disappointing people. So yeah, there's your answer.
You are spot on. If you get to season 7 and you say to yourself, well, I wonder if this show is going to be any good without, I'm going to spoil it for you because the show's been out for 15 years.
Of course,
If you say to yourself, I wonder if this show drops off without Michael Scott, the answer is yes. So be prepared for that and know that if you're going to go through all the way through season 9, there are going to be some rough moments that you're going to hit. Judge the show based on who it is, seasons 1 through 7. I think it kind of peaks around season 4, season 5, and just know that there's a drop off, but it is still a darn good show that is worth watching all the way through.
We will, and the other thing which we just started watching the other night because my wife wanted to watch like the Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime. We started that and we're way behind, but that's actually pretty entertaining too. Certainly a different genre type show, but still pretty entertaining. Where she's a big Hunt for Red October, Fugitive, all those types of deals. So it's that Jack Ryan's totally up her alley.
I think your wife just likes John Krasinski. That's what it comes down to.
She probably, can you blame her?
Yeah, I mean, come on. Like going from Jack Ryan to The Office and back and forth is probably a bit surreal. You're like, wait a minute, what am I watching right now? This is
exactly.
Talk about transformation. That is a massive transformation.
And that's great. And that's great though, because so many times, like you heard people from like American Pie and stuff like that, you're wedged into that like character genre, and you can he's always going to be Stifler regardless of whatever he does. But for Krasinski to be able to like juggle those two and create really good niches, I mean that's awesome for him.
Absolutely, yeah. He is a phenomenal actor. Definitely a big time glow up. Okay, we can talk some actual gambling stuff, some actual college football. I'm thrilled for you with this move because it's allowed you to be able to dip into so many different things, and your interests expand way beyond just college football. Though that's obviously a big part of what you're doing here in the fall. I mean, you love the ponies, soccer, NFL, like you name it, you're all over it. I don't know that everyone knows how tight you and Herbie are because you guys started at ESPN together in mid-90s. What was his reaction when you told him that you were going to be leaving ESPN for Fox?
I think it was at first it was like, oh my God, that's awesome. And then I think as the season went on, and again, we had talked about like things in the past, and I remember having a conversation with him when things first started like steamrolling towards me getting my own like spot on the show and personality. I became more and more on air, and he's like, "Oh, this is great! Like at some point, like you're going to be like maybe in a position where you may have to make a decision if you want to go elsewhere." So it was something that was on his mind and certainly my mind as well. So when this really started going in this direction, he was actually the first person I told outside of my wife that, like, I remember we were on a road and I was like, hey, you need to be the first to know that Fox made me an unbelievable offer and gave me an unbelievable opportunity. And if ESPN doesn't match it, which I don't think they're going to, I'm going to go. And he was like, that's freaking awesome. Good for you, man. I'm so happy for you. And then I think as the last couple of weeks of the season came into full, and like the highlight of our week, like has always been sitting on that bus on Saturday afternoon, 67 degrees, AC down, lights dimmed, 5 TVs on with games, food, quiet, and just like watching. It's like it was a glorified sports bar basically. And like there was one Saturday where it was just he and I, and he was basically just like, can't believe you're leaving. And it wasn't like oh, please don't go or mad. It was just like, this is like one of the last opportunities we're going to have to kind of sit here and do this. But no, I went to the Kentucky Derby with him this year. I've chatted with him quite a bit, not about necessarily football specific related things, but just kind of normal barb. So we're still friends. We're going to be friends. And even though I'm not on game day and I'm not doing the Amazon stuff on Thursday night with him, he's still my guy, and as is Brees and Pollock and Coach and Pat and all. I mean, I will always that's been, I think, been the best thing about this is that I learned, like, there's always a little bit of concern, like, who are your friends and who are your friends because they're forced to be your friend because you work with them and you're on the road for 18 weeks throughout the year or whatever it is. And I've maintained contact and a friendly relationship with all of them. So it's good to see that my judgment and my impression that they actually were true, legitimate friends who were, A, happy for me that I was getting this great opportunity, and B, going to stay friends was great.
You're going to see them this weekend. I mean, crazy that both of the shows are going to be in Boulder. Have you made plans yet? What's dinner with Herbie and Corso going to be like?
I don't think we're going to get there. I think usually there's a nice little team dinner that we have with the big noon crew on Fox on Friday night. I think I have something going on with the Superbook as well. So I don't think there's going to be a game day reunion dinner per se, but I would love to be able to just to catch up with Coach and just say hi for me, even if it's like, Coach, where are you staying? I'd love to just swing by the lobby on the way to the set for you and just say hi and give you a hug, because I mean, who knows how many more opportunities I'm going to get to see those guys in the same location. But Coach is the one guy I definitely want to just kind of say hi to.
I was dialed into Big Noon Kickoff last couple of weeks. You guys have been very much rewarded for going all in with Colorado. We were talking about that a little bit before we came on, which again, that's where you guys are going to be this weekend. But from the gambling side, I'm wondering how in the world to approach this, because even the odds makers are kind of looking at this and they seem a bit stumped. So I want to dig into a couple of these different things from that perspective. On one of the sites that I visit, they have their own Colorado tab. Like that's how big, that's how big the interest is with them. Are you betting in favor of Colorado and the weekly lines until they slow down?
I week one, I was kind of taking the like everyone was kind of piling on, well, worst rosters stink, and I basically said, look, I don't know what way this is going to go, because it's something we've never seen before. We've seen like rosters get overhauled, we've seen coaching staffs come in, but we've never seen just a complete program shift. And it was clear that they did bring in some players, and like I kind of got a sense that the staff that they brought in with Sean Lewis and Charles Kelly, like they have a good coaching staff. I was like, they're probably going to score a bunch of points, and they're probably going to give up a bunch of points based on the depth probably being an issue. So week one, I wasn't like running out there to lay 21 with TCU, because look, TCU was a lot closer to being an 8-4 team than I think last year than people want to buy into. That whole defending runner-up reached the playoff, the title game last year. Like, this is not the same TCU team. And my play in that game was like the TCU team total. I was like, they're going to score points on Colorado, and they did get there. But no, I did not have any of the line. I will say last week I had the under in the game because I thought Nebraska would kind of slow that game down, and I didn't think they turned it over much. And then I did get to Nebraska +3 once it did hit 3 on the show. But and that looked okay for a while. It very easily could have been a scoreless game at halftime, but then the turnovers came and it just went downhill for Nebraska. So this week I'm kind of in a wait and see approach, because and I don't think like this Colorado roster is like, rivalry game, Colorado State, we're going to run out there and beat the boys from Fort Collins. I think if you look at like last week, emotional home opener, week before you go to TCU and win. Next week you go to Eugene for a massive Pac-12 game, and then you got SC the week after that. Like if it were like any other like established power, like this would be an absolute bet against. But I don't think Deion Sanders is wired that way. I don't think his kids are wired that way, especially his son Shedeur and Travis Hunter as well. Like this isn't really a game I want any part of. I'm going to wait and see how. Look, they're not going to lose. So if you get a big money line price and you want to throw it in a parlay, you could do that. Colorado State with the backup quarterback coming in this week as well. But I think bettors are going to be curious to see what happens should they move to 3-0 in an impressive fashion, because next week when they go to Eugene and face by far the best defense that they're going to have faced in the season, and a Heisman quarterback of their own in Bo Nix, and a team that very easily could wind up winning the Pac-12 this year, that's going to be the game where I think a lot of pro bettors and so-called sharp bettors are going to be curious to see if the 3-0 and top and number 12 or whatever Colorado will be ranked, if they tend to get maybe a reduced number on Colorado. But I can see that line next week is going to be very fascinating to see if the Colorado love affair continues and that number gets bet down, or if people are going to say, you know what, this is where the streak ends and Oregon gets steamed up. So it's definitely an interesting couple of weeks coming up.
They're still only 7th in the odds to win the Pac-12, 25-1. And I think some of that is just because the Pac-12 looks really good. And the Pac-12 has really performed well in non-conference play. And you haven't played any of these conference games yet. So it's not like you've already gone into Oregon if you won a game like that. Are those odds tempting at all? Or would that be a stay away? Even at 25-1, that's not worth it.
No, I wouldn't play that, because I think if you look at the depth of the Pac-12 and the schedule, being that you've got to go to Oregon, you got USC, you got UCLA, and then finish up with road games, you got Wazoo and Utah. Like they're not going to get there. But I think the interesting bet would be, for me, and I'd love to get your opinions on this. Like there are like Bryant Coach of the Year awards out there. Like usually you need to be a 10-win team to be the National Coach of the Year. But say they beat Colorado State for 3. They beat Arizona State for 4. They beat Stanford for 5. They beat Arizona for 6. And then maybe they somehow win one. Maybe they beat Oregon State, or maybe they beat Wazoo and they get to 7. Like that's a bet I might want to take, because I think if they get to 7-5, or even if they just get to 6-6 and get to a bowl, you look at the impact that Colorado had on the sport. That became the biggest story in at least the early part of the season. You had 2 unbelievably talented players in Sanders and Travis Hunter, and I mentioned Dylan Edwards. Like that'll be an interesting conversation to have, and that's something I never would have thought a 6-6 coach is going to win Coach of the Year, but that might be in these Colorado future markets. That would be the one that I think I will be most interested in betting.
And think about this too, and I bring this up on the pod all the time, so people are probably sick of hearing me say this, but their one bowl season in the last 15 years, Mike McIntyre cleaned up National Coach of the Year awards that year, and they were like 10-2, I think, in the regular season. They got smoked in the Pac-12 championship games. Like if Deion goes 8-4 in year one with that roster overhaul, knowing what that task was, like I think that's very much on the table that he could be winning. I didn't realize that you could get in on that, and that makes sense though, because it's going to be one of those things where it's all about perception. You're still going to have to beat teams down the stretch here that people don't think that you should beat. We're going to adjust our expectations, and that's what goes into all of this. But you brought up Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, their Heisman odds. Shadeur's sitting there at 30-1, Travis Hunter's at 50-1. Do you like the value of either of those, or do you think the window is kind of closed on that?
I do like the value in those, but I do think the biggest thing that they have going against, two things going against them. Number one, being on the same team, and how does the vote get split?
Yep.
Like I would tend to think voters would lean towards the quarterback, but at the same time, if Travis Hunter is going to be playing 70 snaps a game or whatever it might be, and he has X number of yards and he has 6 interceptions and maybe a defensive touch, like that might be hard to ignore as well. And then the other thing that I think is working against them now is the fact that Texas beat Alabama and they went to Tuscaloosa and won. And I think Quinn Ewers is now a very real candidate because he certainly showed, as did that entire team in that win, just the ability to take a punch and come back, and he made the plays that he didn't necessarily do last year at times, and certainly in week 1 when they got off to a slow start. So I think the fact that Texas won at Alabama and now Ewers is front and center, along with that kind of how will the voters handle Shedeur and Travis Hunter, like I think those are dynamics that might work against one of those guys winning.
Who'd you have in the preseason as the guy that you really liked for their Heisman odds?
I made one Heisman bet in the preseason because my assumption all along was that Caleb Williams was not going to win it 2 years in a row. So I was looking for a second. And everybody, obviously, there's Cade Klubnik love out there. There was Jordan
Jaden
Travis
Daniels.
love out there. And I'm an LSU under guy, so I was not there with that. Like I went way down the board, and I actually bet Connor Wegman at 65-1, thinking that with Petrino in there, that offense could be really good with Stewart and an experienced offensive line. And then you go to Miami last week, and they were an absolute dumpster fire. So I little bit of pizza money on fire there. But unfortunately in the state of Connecticut, I can't open my DraftKings app right now and bet a national title pick or a Heisman pick, because these things vary state to state. So once I get out to New York, and once I get out to Colorado and states that you're actually able to do it, I'm gonna look through and see maybe what Quinn Ewers is as well, and what some other the national title odds might be, because I do think for the first time in a while, like this is not like Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, or not even Michigan, and everybody. Like I think you can go deeper and throw Texas in. You could throw Florida State in. Maybe Oklahoma upsets to I bet Oklahoma at 60-1 to win the title, because I thought the Big 12 was a conference where there was going to be a lot of high variance, and we've seen Baylor win the conference. We've seen TCU get to the playoff, with Kansas State winning the conference. Iowa State nearly won the conference. So like you've had a lot of high variance with Oklahoma and all those close losses last year, and what they had coming back. I thought like if they get to the playoff, and I'm holding 60-1, I mean that's a pretty good ticket to grind out a profit on. So like I think there actually are, for the first time in a while, like legitimate national title contenders outside of Georgia, and Georgia might be priced too short right now. We'll see. I mean, they don't have a regular season game until Tennessee, that I think is really going to challenge them. But what happens in that SEC title game if they have to play Alabama, who's improved by then, or LSU, maybe if they get their act together, or A&M suddenly figures it out. So it'll be very curious. Like I think Georgia is the safest bet to make the playoff, but are they going to beat two other top 5 teams to win a third straight title? We'll see.
I want to go back to the A&M Miami game, because I loved what I saw from Connor Wigman, and I defended him on the recap pod and thought like he did so many things really well in that game that makes me think this offense is actually turning the corner with Bobby Petrino. But obviously you've got to have a certain record probably to be able to win the Heisman, and if they're going to be an 8-4 team, that task is really, really difficult for him. I'm kind of surprised you didn't talk about, as a Miami guy, you didn't talk about Tyler Van Dyke sitting there at 40-1 right now. Some of the throws he was making, man, I was like, dang, this redemption arc for him, it's absolutely there. Is 40-1 for him? Is that intriguing at all? Like if Miami is one of those 9-3 type seasons, is that in play?
9-3, I don't think will be good enough, because that probably doesn't put them in the ACC championship game, because they do have Florida State on the schedule. They do have Clemson on the schedule as well, and they got to go to North Carolina. But like if they're 10-2 when they get in, yeah, that certainly is doable. And I think it was great to see, because I had my questions about, was last year the aberration because the coordinator change, or was it just kind of 2 years ago was a fluke? And I think what we saw last week, I think it showed his relationship with Shannon Dawson and the Jacoby, the receiver as well, that they've turned a little bit of a corner. And I think the offensive line is showing a little bit of nastiness for the first time in a long time. And I think you credit Mario Cristobal for that, being a proud Miami offensive lineman alum. That was a unit that kind of had been seen as soft and given it terrible pass protection the last couple of years. And for Mario, I think he's grown as a coach now. I think going back to his days at Oregon, like one of the knocks against him was meddling too much in the offense. Let the offensive coordinators do their job, call their plays. And I think there were people last year that thought maybe that's what was going on again with Josh Gaddis. And obviously there were changes at both coordinators last year, with Guidry coming in as well. But I think we saw the trust that not only Mario Cristobal has in Shannon Dawson, but that Tyler Van Dyke does as well. So as a Miami alum, this is as optimistic and hopeful as I am that like the program has changed for the first time in a long time. And if you want to factor A&M as well, like how are you feeling today if you are an A&M fan where they basically had like a 4-year start on Miami with the recruiting cycle and a new coach and NIL money and transfer portal. And like Mario comes in year 2 and they hung up basically a 50 burger on him with basically 1 year of kind of reshaping everything. So I think A&M is, those fans are probably rightfully like frazzled right now and frustrated as to why they can't seem to turn the corner.
It's college football hell is what they're in. There are a few teams that are in. I did a segment on it in the offseason, and A&M is firmly in that. And by the way, I can definitely confirm Mario meddling a little bit too much in the offense. I've heard that from one of his former coordinators. We'll just say that. We're living in a world in which it's mid-September and Bama is 9th in the national championship odds. And the SEC championship odds are like plus 325 or something like that. So really not much of a change there after the Texas loss, because obviously that's non-conference. But is there a long-term play with Bama that makes any sense? Or do you just kind of treat them like a week-to-week deal because the quarterback situation is so unsettled? Like it's hard to have faith in any one thing unless it's maybe you're just saying, hey, I'm just going against the grain. And I'm just going to bet against Bama because there's still enough life there to be able to do that.
I think that what happened on Saturday was not an aberration. I think Texas was the better team on that field. If you go position, but you go front seven, you go quarterback, you go receivers, like there was no doubt that Texas was the better team. And if you look at the Alabama remaining schedule, like the fact that they get Tennessee and LSU at home, they do have to go to A&M, but we just got through A&M. We don't know what the heck is going to happen there. Like you said, that was it plus 325 to win the SEC. That's what the price was.
Yep.
Like that's probably still worth the bet because if you get to the SEC title game, you'll be 11-1 or 10-2, depending on what type of tie breaks play out. If they do happen to drop another one, like will Georgia be bigger than a $3 favorite on the money line to win that game? Like, I think that's the question you need to ask, because if you can lock Alabama in at plus money to win the SEC and then Georgia does make it and then say they're only laying 260 or whatever on the money line, you have yourself a nice little scalp there and you're in a win-win situation. So like, I think Alabama plus 325 is still worth the play because I think the youth of this team as the year goes on, I think they will continue to get better. But like, I'm not convinced that Texas isn't the best team they're going to face all year long until if and when they do play Georgia.
I don't want to put you on the spot too much here, but and if you don't have a read on these games, as we record this on Wednesday morning, that's perfectly fine. But two lines that I think are really, really interesting looking at the slate this week. Kansas State, only a 4.5-point favorite at Mizzou. Obviously, Kansas State dominated that matchup last year. A little bit weird with the rain delay, but still, it was very lopsided. And Iowa's a 28.5-point favorite against Western Michigan, who I realized like Western Michigan just couldn't stop anything against Syracuse, but still, I mean, huge game for the Brian Ferentz drive to 325 and all that stuff. You could pick either one of those games, or maybe there's another spread that you jumped all over early in the week to kind of break down. Yeah,
that Missouri-Kansas State game does seem very low because I know there are a lot of Missouri fans who are very upset with, like, they're undefeated, but like they know they haven't looked very good, but that number is very low, which would kind of set off sirens in my head. Like, I don't know if I want to necessarily get involved with K-State, Missouri. And it's not like it's a look-ahead game or anything, or sad because get UCF next week, and UCF without Plumlee is certainly not the same opponent. Yeah, the Iowa, I just don't know if Western Michigan is going to be able to score any points in Iowa. Of those two games, I would be inclined to lay the points with the Hawkeyes. I know they go to Penn State next week, but again, I don't think this is a vintage Western Michigan team that's going to be one of those contenders in the MAC that's going to be running up and down the field, scoring a bunch of points. I mean, they got absolutely blown out at Syracuse last year in the Orange last week rather. And the Orange put, I think, 45-7 or something like that. So I just would trust the Iowa defense to probably keep Western Michigan to 10 points or fewer. And I would think that at some point that McNamara and the offense would be able to figure it out. But yes, I would think they're. And I was funny. I'm glad you brought it up because I brought this up on our production call the other day. Like at some point, like how does the play calling change? Like this is a game that they need to put up 40, 50 points in order to give themselves some leeway once they get into the Big Ten play. So this probably would be that game. I'm curious to see what the betting splits and the talking heads ultimately talk about this game, if this is one of those where a lot of people are seeing the same thing. But I don't necessarily have a game that stands out to me right now, but I think there's still some things that it's still college football. And I think if you clump a bunch of games together, you look at ranked teams on the road on a conference game. Florida State's at BC. BC's terrible, but it could be really miserable weather in the Northeast this week. Penn State goes to Illinois. Look at Penn State's first road game the last couple of years. Survived against Purdue last year, survived against Wisconsin the year before that. The COVID year, they lost that game to Indiana. So like their first road game has been a problem for them. LSU goes to Mississippi State, and that's never a bargain. Tennessee goes to Florida, and we think Florida's down, and Graham Mertz isn't like good, and this Gator team has issues, but they're still conference road games. They're all teams that are favored by at least a touchdown. So it would not surprise me if a couple of those underdogs are a little bit more frisky than a lot of people think, because they just say, ranked team, unranked team, no issue. But you and I have been following college football long enough to know that is definitely not the case. And certainly when you get into conference play, things can certainly change. You can get a lot of upsets.
Love a home dog in conference play. Always attractive. I'm just like, oh God, they're getting 9.5. Like, come on. That's just so unbelievably tempting. Last thing for you. I just want to say I'm sorry. I don't have a lot of Jets fans in my life. Like you talk about being in college football hell. NFL hell is having to watch Zach Wilson be your starting quarterback every single week. But just for your sake, just don't maybe think about the fact that your team could have had Jamar Chase or Patrick Surtain or Micah Parsons. Just don't think about that. It's not worth it.
When I tweeted out the top 12 or 13 of the draft yesterday, I definitely was in like the anger stage of the stages of grief yesterday morning. And people, oh yeah, you say that now. No, I was saying it at the time. If you want to go back to like pre-2021 draft and look at my comments and everything, like I was all in on Penei Sewell is who I wanted the Jets to take, because at the time the offensive line was terrible. And yeah, they would have had a decision to make a quarterback, but like I was not in on Zach Wilson in heading into that draft. Like 1 year in a COVID type season where he made this massive improvement with an offensive line that was like 4 years older than the opponents they were playing against this makeshift schedule of not necessarily great teams. Like I was not there, and it's one of the situations where I hated being right. But it was funny. I know on the Bear Bets podcast last week, I love the Jets plus 2.5 in the game, and I was like just saying how this is excited as I am about a Jets team, and a lot like we made the biggest quarterback upgrade ever from Zach Wilson and Mike White to Aaron Rodgers. Like the defense is going to be so good, and like they have a legit chance this year. And this is excited as I've been since 1999. So this is setting up for massive disappointment, because a quarter into the 99 season, the season was over when Vinny Testaverde ruptured his Achilles against the Patriots, and it was all downhill from there. And I didn't expect to see what we saw on Monday night, and basically the same exact injury, even shorter into the game than we did in 99. But yeah, it's hell. I mean, to have it be a year of looking forward to this, you're excited, and then after 4 plays. But that being said, you know what? I was so happy that they won, because the defense played their what off, and they deserved that. They deserve to be happy for that night at least. And now when you go to Dallas on Sunday and you've got to throw Zach Wilson to that defense behind that offensive line, that'll be a different story. But I was very happy to see them did win. And one of my buddies, who's a lifelong Jets fan like I am, basically I tweeted something out, a text that he sent, and it was dead on. Like for on the night where they finally broke us for good emotionally to a point where we can't take it anymore. They showed one of like the most high character wins and performances they ever have. And oh, by the way, Zach Wilson stinks. So.
They just get you back. That's what being a fan is all about.
It's funny too. I don't want to go into like Jets backup quarterback talk here with you, but it's so funny. Like people talk like it doesn't matter. The season's over. Like you're the same team you were last year now because offensively you have the same problem. You don't have a quarterback. So, oh well,
it'll be okay. It'll be okay. Yeah. On the bright side,
the Canes are back though, right?
Yeah, sure. Totally. Look, that's all that matters right now. Canes are back. They're at least back to not being a total doormat. You've got a great job. Yeah, life is good, man. You're going to spend some more time in your new home, Boulder, Colorado. Like life is good. Yeah. It could be a whole lot worse. Just tell yourself the NFL season's already over. That's better.
I will. And as it was funny, I joked and I said, boy, what a great opening weekend. Texas Tech was never the wrong side. And I wound up losing them. I wound up losing my big survivor pick with the Seahawks, and then I lost my team's quarterback for the year on Monday night. So it was a great Saturday, Sunday, Monday, just absolute triple header of football awfulness. So only one way to go up from here, right? It's up.
It's amen. Look, life will get a lot better, I'm sure. Bear, you're the best, man. Really, really appreciate it. Looking forward to watching this weekend, and I'll have you back on. We'll discuss the rest of seasons 6 through 9 of The Office.
Absolutely.
My lad of the week is Liam Cohen, the Kentucky offensive coordinator, the doppelganger of yours truly. Mm-hmm. If you saw this on Sunday, really scary situation. He had a medical episode, was hospitalized, and was able to return to the football facility the next day. He's going to be calling plays this weekend, but just one of those things that you're just like, dang, man, I think of him as a guy that's basically my age, and obviously somebody that I have a lot of respect for. And he's been super, super kind to me in the couple years that I've been able to get to know him, and obviously have some fun with the fact that we may or may not be related at some different Irish lineage way down the road. But hated seeing that. And it's weird, really, really weird. So that came out Sunday night. And then Sunday night going into Monday, I got bad food poisoning. Like really, really bad food poisoning. We both actually got food poisoning this week. How weird is that?
Yeah, I literally was up to like 8 a.m. last night, and I like messaged my boss at like 6:30. I was like, brother, this 8:30 alarm is not happening today. But yeah, dude, it's such an underratedly bad feeling. Like, you ever want to just feel emasculated, get food poisoning?
Oh, it is the absolute worst. And it's so like, it was weird. It's almost like, I'm not trying to make this about me or anything, or trying to like make light of his situation. I hope he's doing well and all of that. But it was like, God basically says, oh, same breed of human, illness right now, or sickness, and having that happen at such a similar time frame. It was just kind of strange the way that all played out. But
you guys are doing too well. He has a new quarterback. He's got his old gig back. You just had Claire. You know what I'm saying? You guys had to get knocked down a peg.
Yeah, very much so. Just a reminder. I think anytime you see a coach that has a medical episode or something like that, or I was even reminded of this a little bit over the weekend, and not that I'm in the same situation, but part of why I think I had food poisoning was because my body was just totally out of whack. It was the first time of the year in which I was working off of basically 4 hours of sleep, Saturday going into Sunday, and my body just Sunday night into Monday totally shut down. And I always wonder with these coach health scares, the ridiculous things that they put their body through. And I ask coaches when they come on the pod, especially new coaches, how much sleep you getting or anything like that, because I think it's fascinating. I think there's a part of this that is depressing. I'm not saying that's the case with Liam or anything like that, and I don't know the details or ins and outs, and he'll explain what happened on his own time. But just kind of a reminder, even this time of year when the entire priority is on football, just take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. I probably should have taken a nap on Sunday afternoon instead of watching Bears Packers. Really dumb idea. Probably should have caught up on a little bit of sleep. Lauren's down, Claire's down. That one was on me. The iceberg lettuce that I ate on Sunday night, that's on iceberg lettuce. But yeah, we're hanging in there. I'm at like 85%. What percentage are you at right now?
60 something. The fact that I haven't said something incredibly dumb today is mind blowing, but there's still time.
Yeah, good for you.
Anyway, onto my lad of the week. My lad of the week is just old guys in general. So Connor, have you seen this new NBA resting policy that has just come out?
Anytime you have ever asked me if I have seen something, 99% of the time it is no. It is always no. But do tell.
Okay, so basically the NBA is cracking down on teams resting players. And you would love this because it's kind of adjacent to the flopping thing that you're not crazy about in the NCAA, where they like guys will take a dive and they have to stop the like they have to stop the clock, and you kind of do this whole like, let's tear it down, let's start it from the square one. That's exactly what the NBA is doing right now. I don't know how effective it's going to be, but basically if you have 2 stars on your team, they basically both have to play, or you can be missing one of them. So that's like how it works. Is you can't rest guys on back-to-backs, and I'll get to more of that in a second. But it goes into, okay, if there's a hardworking consumer here who is paying to see Steph Curry, and they went to, like, last time Steph Curry played in New Orleans. This is like a national podcast I was listening to. Last time he played in New Orleans was like 5 years ago. And they were like, well, if you have fans that are paying their, hard-earned money to come see Steph Curry, he's at least going to dress out. And you can't also, there's a caveat for you can't do the Anthony Davis, which is I'm going to check him in, play him 12 minutes, sit him down so I can say he checked in this game. So there's going to be a lot of very stringent pencil pushing going on, seeing, well, you played this guy 20 minutes. Usually you play him about 30. What's going on here? But the reason why old guys are my lad of the week is I thought to myself, how could they get this passed? Obviously, the older players in the league are the ones, resting the most. So most of these guys are in the NBA PA. How are they gonna? How would they sign off on this? Well, there's a chronically old condition in this resting thing, which says here basically if you are 35 years old on opening night, so night 2 for 35, good luck. Not a problem. If you're 35 on opening night, if you have 34,000 regular season minutes or 1,000 regular season and combined playoff games, like combined, you are not subject to this rule, especially on back-to-backs. So the star players who fall into this category are Chris Paul, Mike Conley, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, DeMar DeRozan, and James Harden. So basically, they tried to get this rule passed. They realized that the biggest objectors would be the old guys and just gave them special old guys rules. And I love that so much that they were just like, how's LeBron going to sign off on this? He won't do that. Let's make a rule specifically for him. And so I just want to say, like, it's a funny thing, but we do kind of need to think of, like we talked about with the flopping thing, we need to think of interesting ways to, let these kids see their heroes and do all that. And if it comes... Hopefully it doesn't come at the expense of guys. Like, I bet the first injury that comes after this policy is going to be so like, oh, the policy didn't do anything. But yeah, I love that Adam Silver's trying new stuff. I love the in-season play-in tournament. I like the concept of, like, it sucks when a professional sports team or a sports team of any kind just punts a game. Like, that is one of the most like disrespectful things ever, So,
I hate that. Like, the amount of times that I've thought to myself, oh, it'd be fun. Like, I live 9 miles from the Amway Center. I'd love to go see Steph Curry. I'd love to go see LeBron James. And then I think to myself, why am I going to pay an arm and a leg for these ridiculously priced tickets when there's a 60% chance maybe of them playing? Like, no, why would I sign up for anything like that? I am pro rest. I am pro old guy, as I think I'm getting close to that territory now. I'm 30, I'm 33 and a half. No, I'm not quite 33 and a half. I'm getting there. I'm really close. But as someone who is nearing his mid 30s very, very quickly, and he's getting more and more gray in the beard, gosh, it's bad. It's really bad. We're pro rest. We're pro rest. That is the message of lad of the week. Pro rest, especially for the olds. Once you reach a certain age, everybody needs
the olds.
It,
absolutely.
Everybody needs it. Excited for this slate. Very, very excited for this slate. If you have not, leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Saturday Down South on YouTube. You can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast, which is presented by Texas Pete. Follow us on X at the SDS Pod, at Sat Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon. Enjoy week 3.